Liberal outrage over this story has been almost entirely focused on Trump's comments, but ignores the bigger picture, the fact that it was the Biden administration who made this ethnic cleansing plan possible by facilitating—
Oh, I hate him so much. Me. Oh God, this is what happens. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. This is your source. He's promoting a platform that tells you how to read news responsibly, and you go to the article. This is his process. Trump revives Biden's failed proposal to remove Palestinians from Gaza. Well done, Matthew Petty. You go down. What did Biden actually say? He's working to set up a humanitarian corridor for civilians to flee to Egypt. Why do the Houthis have such a beef with Israel? It's like 1,000 miles away. Israel's only ever attacked Yemen after the Houthis have attacked them. And then they'll say, oh, it's because they can't help but see their Arab brothers suffering. Meanwhile, the Houthis supported Assad in Syria. They supported Assad as he was using chemical weapons on his own people. Like these guys, the axis of resistance, like these guys are the biggest Arab killers in the region. They kill so many Arabs, far more than Israel does.
About a month ago, the 6 million subscriber YouTube channel H3H3 Productions released a video called Content Nuke Hasan Piker. In this video, the host, YouTuber Ethan Klein, alleges that the political streamer Hasan Piker is an extremist that supports terrorism and terrorist groups.
And over time, I started to learn that my co-host, he really likes terrorists.
Promotes anti-Semitism and is radicalizing his viewers to do the same. He accuses Hasan of being a rape denialist and goes on to accuse him of prolonging what he calls the Israel-Palestine conflict with his radical views.
This conflict will never end until people realize that Palestinian liberation and Israeli security are not mutually exclusive.
Whoa!
You need both, and it can be done, but not while—
No, what we need to do is run around Israel with guns and just kill random people and say, what's my objective here? What am I even supposed to do? Oh no.
people like Hasan lie, propagandize, and incite hate. It's people like him, ironically, that prolong the conflict indefinitely.
In this video, Ethan also criticizes Twitch, the platform that Hasan streams on, accusing the company of having a systemic problem of anti-Semitism. He cites the company's open support of Hasan, its sponsorship of a live event that Ethan claims was anti-Semitic.
I feel like this is indefensible, blatant, obvious anti-Semitism, and this was greenlit by Twitch to appear on their main stage.
And its alleged discrimination against Jews through a recent ban on new account signups from Israel. So I'm gonna tip my hand a bit here and say at the outset that this video is quite possibly the worst video I've ever seen. It's plagued with factual errors, misrepresentations, contradictions, and overt pro-Israel Bush-era U.S. State Department propaganda. For a more thorough breakdown of all of this video's problems, I'd recommend the YouTube channel Bad Empanada. He's gone point by point with these and debunked them, many of them months prior to the release of Ethan's video. Hasan himself has also responded to most of these claims also months ago. I will leave these videos linked below in a playlist. Given the existence of these dozens of other responses, I'm not here to repeat their arguments. You can just go watch them. No, the real reason I'm talking about Ethan's video today is less about what he says in it and more about what he doesn't say, the things he chooses to leave out. Save for a passing mention of an outdated, vastly underestimated death toll of Palestinians in Gaza, Ethan omits the Palestinian side of the story entirely. He doesn't talk about Gaza. He doesn't give any specifics about what Israel is doing there. And this is an issue for a few reasons, but mainly
I don't think Ethan really disagrees with Hasan all that much on what's happening in Gaza. That's the thing, right? Yeah, usually when you make a video about someone, you talk about the disagreements. Like, Ethan also hasn't really spoken all that much about, he didn't speak about the civil rights movement in that video either, because probably both him and Hasan think it was a good thing. Hasan maybe thinks Malcolm X was more important and more useful than he actually was, but okay.
all of the points he raises are directly tied to the Gaza genocide. The main targets of this video are some of the only groups in the world that have violently resisted Israel's genocide, and the few figures in independent media that are willing to tell the Palestinian side of the story. By leaving out the broader context, Ethan is able to present a false perception to these millions of viewers about the motivations behind the people his video attacks. He's able to
are we going to talk about the motivations of Hezbollah and the Houthis? Are we actually going to, maybe we'll actually read some words from Nasrallah and the Houthis themselves, maybe. I can't wait. We're actually going to see what those people really think. Because I would really hate to have to pause this video. I'm so mad. I know I'm mad because I know what he's going to do. But it's like, I know I'm going to have to pause this video and show you what Nasrallah actually thinks about Israel and Israelis and Jews. And I have to do the same for the Houthis, because none of these people do it. They don't listen to what Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis actually have to say about the conflict. But maybe we'll get some refreshing.
Frame them as mindless, terrorist-supporting, America-hating anti-Semites, and not what they really are, which
Resistance.
is anti-genocide people that are against genocide.
True.
Western media manufactures consent for large-scale terror operations.
That's what, yeah, they really hate like genocide. They hate which to you guys is like killing lots of people, right? They really hate that. That's why Hezbollah supported Assad. That's why they went to Syria. Oh, this is hardcore. I forgot. Don't die right off the bat. Be careful. I don't know if I have debuffs. Oh my god.
Warning.
Don't die. Don't die.
Health warning.
It's hardcore. Don't die. Don't die.
Operations across the globe in a number of ways. There are more overt forms like atrocity propaganda. There are also more subtle ways like deceptively framing information, using passive language, and creating false perceptions about conflicts through things like burying the lead and lies by omission. All of these tactics are present in Ethan's video and the wider online smear campaign that motivated it, but it's that last thing that I think does quite a
Did Teuton just watch this video and then come to me with what he's smear campaign? He's using all the language of this video. Is that what he did? Man, they're radicalizing my youths.
bit of damage, lying by omission. The way Ethan's video is framed seems to imply that Israel's genocide in Gaza is not actually a genocide. He never explicitly uses the term himself, but it's presented as just another thing that's happening in the Middle East that's sad, but ultimately the product of a war. That there are deaths on both sides, and that all we need to have...
Why wouldn't you go and see if Ethan's ever called it a genocide in any other area? He has. Maybe he's changed his mind? Are you trying to allude to that?
Peace is rational dialogue between these two sides. This could not be further from the truth, and to better understand this, we need to talk about Gaza. Thus far, I've been using the term genocide in reference to Israel's actions in Gaza, but it seems like a lot of the people using it on social media here have a general lack of understanding of the gravity of what that term actually means. Genocide isn't just a bad thing that's happening where people are dying. No, that's not what it is. It's a Holocaust. The U.S.-Israeli Holocaust. That's what it should be called. Israel...
Oh my god. Oh my god. Man, if I was Jewish right now, oh my god, I would be, bro. We need another piece of music. If I was Jewish right now, holy I would be so furious. The Holocaust? Really? Why should it be called the Holocaust, Noah Samsen? Was the Holocaust the real one? Was that precipitated by Jewish militant groups just running into Germany and just killing random people in the like over 1,000 of them and kidnapping and then having a de facto government military and militarizing their area to the point that it's probably the most densely militarized environment in the entire world and hiding behind all their civilians as they do it? Okay. You know, Hamas have said they still want to fight. They've said they still want to fight Israel, right? They still want to do October 7th. They still want to destroy the country through military means. Isn't it interesting that all these uniformed Hamas people suddenly just appeared out of fucking nowhere as soon as the ceasefire starts and is ready to hand over the hostages, right? Where were all their uniforms during the war? Oh yeah, they didn't wear any. They didn't wear the uniforms. They literally just, they disguised themselves. They basically said to Israel, yep, we're fighting you. And if you want to fight us, if you want to hit us back so that we don't try to attack you again, you're going to have to go through civilians. Sorry. Good luck with that. That's what they did. That's their entire strategy. Ooh.
Israel is using everything in its power to eradicate Palestinians from the planet. The fact that Israel's actions in Gaza amount to genocide isn't controversial, not among the experts at least. This is the near universal consensus among top human rights groups and humanitarian organizations operating on the ground in Gaza.
Is he going to mention Let's see if he gets to it.
Israel's committing genocide, countless war crimes.
Everything in its power. That's so stupid as well. Why would you say everything in its power when they're clearly not doing everything in their power to wipe Palestinians off the planet? Like, what the do you know how much power, how much firepower Israel has? Like, he's not even making this slow motion genocide argument here.
And crimes against humanity. There is the Amnesty International report, a 300-page report that accused Israel of genocide in Gaza. There was the Human Rights Watch.
So, given that a lot of these human rights organizations just kind of like copy paste each other, you can usually go with like one. If you look at the Amnesty one, is he going to mention that Amnesty challenged the ICJ's interpretation of the Genocide Convention and like said that they should change it for their analysis? Is he going to mention that?
Watch report accusing Israel of crimes against humanity and genocide in Gaza, specifically through the intentional deprivation of access to clean drinking water. The United Nations, Euromed Monitor, Doctors Without Borders, the International Committee of the Red Cross, Israeli human rights groups like B'Tselem, various Holocaust scholars, they're all saying the same thing. Last year, the International Court of Justice ruled that the case for Israel's genocide in Gaza is plausible. It was a preliminary hearing and the final...
No, they didn't say it was plausible. No, that's not what they said at all. The ICJ president literally had to come out and say that's not what they said. He's still stuck on that one. Oh my god. Do I have to go and get these links? We've done this so many times. Well, I kind of blame the ICJ for not explaining their legal language effectively. But, you know.
Rulings on cases of genocide typically take multiple years, but the ICJ issued a
I just want to enjoy my video game, bro. What the... Can you explain what the Joan Donahue clarification meant? Yeah. Okay, where's the tab? That's not it? Okay. What she said was... Can I just go to...
Several rulings on cases...
Why is it not letting me do picture-in-picture? Oh, here. So, in the court's view, the facts and circumstances mentioned above are sufficient to conclude that at least some of the rights claimed by South Africa and for which it is seeking protection are plausible. So what that means is... And they mention this later on, if they don't mention it in this paragraph. They mention that what's happening to Palestinians is that there is what they called a plausible risk. There's two qualifiers there, plausible and risk, of irreparable harm to the rights brought by South Africa, which would be the rights to not be genocided. Okay. Now, plausible already means a low standard. They said that in Gambia and Myanmar, that plausibility had a low standard of evidence because they didn't even base this on a, like, this isn't a merits-based ruling. This is a preliminary ruling. And plausible risk does not mean it's plausible that it's happening right now. Plausible risk means it's plausible, as in like not impossible, like that there's a risk of this happening. There's two qualifiers there, that this will happen. Plausible risk is a future tense. That's what they were referring to. So they did, and that's why the Judge Nolte, who voted in favor of all of these provisional measures, who voted in favor of what the court said, literally said the words, "I do not find that Israel's military campaign in Gaza is plausibly being done with genocidal intent." But he still signed off on plausible risk because he said, well, it's not happening now, but I think it could happen in the future. That's what he said. So that's the explanation. And that's why Judge Donahue came out and said that. And that's also why people who voted in favor of the provisional measures didn't necessarily even think it was plausible that genocide was happening right now, like Nolte. Now, where are these snakes? Kill them for their shards. Bro, where are they? I'm rusty. Are they in the cave? Oh, no. So what you're saying is there is plausible intent. Yeah, because I think Nolte argued that he didn't think it was plausible that the war was being done with genocidal intent, but he did think it was plausible that some of the inflammatory statements from government could allow for genocidal acts to take place in the future. But that's a very soft statement given that war rhetoric is generally quite insane. Like, look at what the American generals and politicians said after 9/11, right? They were unhinged. And that's also why they didn't call for a ceasefire in this hearing, in this reading. They did do it for Ukraine. The ICJ did call for an immediate ceasefire unconditionally from Russia.
genocide in Gaza is plausible. It was a preliminary hearing, and the final rulings on cases of genocide typically take multiple years, but the ICJ issued several provisional measures to prevent the possibility of a genocide taking place, provisional measures which Israel has failed to follow completely. And then there was, of course, the International Criminal Court, who issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Israel.
He went to amnesty there. Has the ICJ said that Israel has completely failed to follow the provisional measures? But obviously the ICJ has not said that, because one of the provisional measures was don't commit genocide, right? So if the ICJ thought that they'd failed completely, then the ICJ would be saying Israel has committed genocide, but the ICJ hasn't said that yet. So yeah, the case would be shut if they thought that. So that's a bit of a strongly worded. That's the thing, like these people, like I know that Noah has not read this entire Amnesty report. Like it's 300 pages, so it must be convincing, right? It's from Amnesty. Like, I don't know why I'm just dealing with this headline spammer. Like there's not been any critical engagement with any of the things he's citing here. He's just riffing off of headlines. If you look at the Amnesty report, is the case even still ongoing? Yeah, it is ongoing, yeah. Even Finkelstein didn't read it fully. Well, he doesn't act like someone who has, that's all I know. Maybe he forgot certain parts. This is the page from the Amnesty report that gives you an example of why it's not even like wrong. It's unreliable. Where would you be? Page 107. Yeah, here. One of their pieces of evidence is direct attacks on civilians, because obviously killing members of the group. And they mentioned 15 airstrikes across Jabalia, North Gaza, Deir al-Balah, Nuseirat. These are all the refugee camp areas, as well as in southern Gaza and Rafah. So they talk about this, and they mention these airstrikes. And they say the strike killed 15 civilians. The strike killed 4 civilians, 2 children, did not find an objective, did not find any military objective, contradictory remarks, did not find a military objective, did not find a military objective. Do you know why they're saying this? What they're basing this on? The methodology of this is interviews with locals. I think they interviewed about 200 locals total. The problem with that is I'm not suggesting that the locals are liars. I don't think they're bad people or anything. There is one problem though, and it's that the locals might not be liars, but Hamas are. And Hamas, literally in previous wars, has told the local population to lie when they are asked about strikes and deaths. They're specifically told and forbidden from saying otherwise. And if you're in Gaza, you can believe what you want and you can see what you saw, but you're probably not going to defy what Hamas wants you to do. You notice that Hamas are quite bad to you, actually. Like Hamas will treat you quite badly if you disobey them, right? And if you go against them. So the Interior Ministry in 2014, this video is gone now, by the way. Their channel is gone. Look at this. The Interior Ministry channel is gone. It got taken off of YouTube for TOS violations. But this was them in 2014 in Operation Protective Edge, where they did this on Facebook as well, and they did this on Al-Aqsa TV, which is the Hamas-controlled TV station, is they told people, why is it doing that? They told people that if someone dies, you have to list them, always describe them as an innocent civilian or an innocent citizen. Where is it? This is the only place I have this video anymore. Oh yeah, don't publish pictures of missiles being launched from the city center. Yeah, here. Don't forget to always add, quote, innocent citizens to describe those killed in the aggression on Gaza after the Israeli raid. Like the problem is if you want to know about how Hamas behaves in this war, or if you want to know about this war at all, really, you can't really do it without looking at previous wars. Because we know from previous wars that Hamas will hide their dead. It's in their interest. It's completely in their interest to hide the dead. They did it in Kasled. For a long, long time in Kasled, when I think like 1,400 people died, Hamas kept on saying, we only lost 50 members. 50 out of 1,400. It wasn't until a year later, after the war ended, when the Goldstone report had been published, when everyone was saying that Israel's targeting civilians is a matter of policy, after all that, then Hamas published their death count, which was actually 700, right? So they've done it in the past, and in Protective Edge, they did the same. They did the same with literally telling people like civilians, don't say that someone you know who died was a soldier, even if they were. Don't do it. And this is what the Amnesty Report is based on. It's based on witness statements. And witnesses who are under authoritarian rule, that's a problem, right? Because the witness can be the most honest, like, well-meaning person in the world, but if you have someone with a gun, like, in charge of the area that you live in, then you're probably going to listen to the guy with the gun and do what they say.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who are now wanted international war criminals. Towards the start of his video, Ethan mentions a death toll figure of 40,000 Palestinian people.
Of course, if you compare the raw numbers, Gazans have lost a lot more than Israelis. 40,000 people have died, and neighborhoods have been completely flattened during this war.
The figure he cites is wrong. It's just wrong. Credible estimates have placed the full scale of the slaughter in Gaza at over 65,000 deaths due to traumatic injury alone, with further projections that include indirect deaths in the hundreds of thousands, potentially over 10% of the population of Gaza.
So what number are you supposed to say? If he had said 60,000, would that have been a problem? Because the projection, which is not a non-peer-reviewed projection, by the way, which is just based on a model of different wars that have had indirect deaths, like around across history, and just saying that, like, oh, because like of some war in Uganda in the 80s where the people died of like starvation, like something like that. That's what they based it on. They based it on like 15 different wars where there'd been additional deaths, either because of like, for the Iraq war, indirect deaths was counted as like, they included things like Sunni and Shia sectarian violence that came after the war, and counted that as like, so you can't really do that for wars that have just massively different circumstances, or for like wars where there were full on like widespread famines. Also in that Lancet study, one of the examples they use, why can't I find these snakes, is Kosovo, where in Kosovo obviously had basically zero indirect deaths because there was plenty of access to humanitarian aid and things like that. Yeah, where are these? Are they up here? How do you get up there? I feel like I'm just going in circles. They're in a cave. Oh, I went in the cave though. Anyway, I'm pausing too much.
Ethan's brief and false citation leaves a lot of other things unmentioned, like how
Is it really a false citation to just give the health ministry's numbers? God, he's so disgusting, this guy. Holy shit. Like, you can't just try to make the death toll as high as you possibly want it to be and then on other people for not doing the same thing. I think the health ministry's last numbers were 45,000, I think, at the time that this video came out. He just gave the health ministry's numbers. Like, you, Jesus Christ.
Vast majority of these deaths have been Palestinian civilians, including over 15,000 children. The United Nations described Gaza as a graveyard for children just months into the genocide, and after that, Israel only ramped up its child killing. Ethan does not mention that over 1,200 families have been completely erased from the Gaza civil registry, meaning that every single member of their bloodline has been killed. Nor does he mention that the mass slaughter of these innocent civilians has been intentional. Israel has a long history of intentionally targeting Palestinian civilians for slaughter. This dates back to the Nakba, the ethnic cleansing of over 700,000 Palestinians from their land in 1948, which included the...
God, he's not even good at pro-Palestinian propaganda. He could mention like the Irgun and how they would, and the Lehi that would drop bombs in urban centers in the 30s during the Arab Revolt. They targeted civilians. Like, he could do that. It's before the Nakba, right? In the Arab Revolt. Okay. He's not, I could do his side better than this.
Massacre of thousands of civilians, and it's also evident in all of Israel's many previous violent incursions into Gaza specifically. During Operation Cast Lead, starting in late 2008 to 2009, Israel slaughtered about 1,400 Palestinian people. 300 of those were children. During this widespread massacre, Israel ordered people to shelter in schools, so-called humanitarians.
This is the war, Cast Lead. Obviously, he does not read anything substantial about it. This is the one where the police station bombings happened. And it turned out that those police stations were actually full of soldiers because they'd integrated the police force with the military. Hamas, he mentioned 1,400. This was the delayed thing from Hamas. Hamas admits 600 to 700 of its men were killed in Cast Lead. So that's 1-to-1 in urban warfare with a group that hides behind civilians and doesn't fight in uniforms all that often. So, you know, so if you're targeting civilians, but you manage to kill half of them as Hamas guys. Are you saying that like half of Gaza is Hamas for that level of, for that ratio?
Safe zones, then proceeded to bomb the schools and kill people by the dozens. This practice has continued at an even larger scale in the latest escalation in Gaza.
For us, my brother.
Yeah, sorry, these guys are not in caves, by the way. I can't see anything in this cave. I can see trolls. Is there a different cave? I'm just going in circles now. I need to go somewhere else. Let's leave this place.
The Firas, he screams. The pain is overwhelming as corpses lie by his feet. These are the moments just after an Israeli strike on a school sheltering thousands of displaced Palestinians.
During the 2018 border protests, or the Great March of Return, which were recognized by human rights organizations as being overwhelmingly peaceful, Israel fired on the peaceful crowds with...
It's like saying January 6th was overwhelmingly peaceful because most people didn't go into the Capitol building. But who were the ones who actually got hit? Was it the ones who stayed back, the majority of them who stayed back, or was it the ones who went towards the fence? Who attacked, who fought with the military on the other side? Overwhelmingly peaceful, by the way, Hamas and Islamic Jihad claimed just under 30% of the people who died. Okay, overwhelmingly peaceful, sure.
Sniper rifles, injuring thousands and killing hundreds. The UN reports concluded that Israeli snipers were intentionally targeting children, medics, pregnant women, and disabled people. Israeli snipers later publicly, gleefully recounted their experiences of hunting Palestinians for sport, bragging about the number of kneecaps they could shatter. This trend has continued in Israel's latest escalation since October 7th to an extreme degree.
The way he's summarizing everything is just so mental. It's like, even if can you please stop carrying water for the side that gunned down these people? This guy is carrying water for the people who were literally trying to attack civilians and describing them as overwhelmingly peaceful. Who's covering for who? You can make the criticisms of the March of Return. Yes, they were very trigger happy. There were people who did not deserve to die. Like he even mentions one of them, Najjar, the medic, who the IDF not only murdered, but they lied about her as well. They clipped her out of context and said that she was self-admitted human shield, right? Don't act like I don't know what the happened. I know more than you do about what happened. But he's saying this was what? An overwhelmingly peaceful protest, and then Israel fired on them, killing 200 or something. Like, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. People were like attacking, people were trying to break through the border fence, and they literally said they were trying to do that. They had maps. They were distributing publicly on social media maps for how to break through the border and get to the nearest kibbutz. To do what exactly? Like, I don't know, maybe I just have more of an affinity with my Middle Eastern brethren, okay? But when I was in Lebanon, or when I was in Israel, on either side of that border, even when I was 13 in South Lebanon, no one had to explain to me that it would be a bad idea to walk towards the border, or even to walk towards the Syrian military bases, because there were Syrian occupiers there as well. Because if I did that, I'd probably expect to get shot. It's a militarized border that's separating it's an armistice line that's separating two armed factions and that are part of a conflict. Yeah, probably don't go towards that border, especially not to try and fight with the soldiers on the other side. This is Sinwar, by the way, leader of Hamas at the time, 1 week into the March of Return.
خرجنا اليوم وسنخرج على مدار الأيام القادمة وسيفاجئ شعبنا وشبابنا وسيفاجئ شعبنا وسيفاجئ شبابنا العالم كله بما في جهده ولينتظروا زحفنا الكبير سنقتلع الحدود وسنقتلع قلوبهم.
I think what he means is this is like a figure of speech, right? It's like a figure of speech, isn't it? Like about winning the hearts and minds. This is him 1 week into the March of Return, because it lasted like almost a year, these protests. Okay. Just because Noah did say something about how he wants his audience to understand the motivations of groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, and feels like they've been strawmanned by the likes of Ethan Klein, so there, just thought I'd give you that one. Sinwar saying that and encouraging people to march towards the border with the intent of breaking it down to target civilians in the kibbutz. That's Sinwar saying that isn't actually mentioned in the UN report, so just thought I'd plug the gap. Where the f are these snakes? They're not in this cave. They're not. Look, they're not in this cave. What are you talking about? I'm stuck and I'm scared. I'm on hardcore mode. I'm not used to it. It's been too long.
IDF snipers are intentionally targeting children for execution by shooting them in the skull and in the heart. Healthcare workers have testified to seeing Israeli drones hovering outside of hospitals, picking off children. That's where they're shooting them and injuring them and then circling back to execute them.
What I think I found...
Just to double check, I don't know about the drones. I don't doubt that there have been war crimes committed with those drones, because if you're in a drone, you can see what you're hitting, right? Quite easily. The evidence that they had for them targeting kids with snipers is that one Jewish American doctor, that Mark Perlmutter guy, who thinks Zionism is the same as Nazism, standard, he said that people were hit by high velocity ammunition. That's his proof that they were intentionally sniped. High velocity ammunition just means it came out of a rifle. So strange accusation to make.
Particularly disturbing was that a bomb would drop maybe on a crowded, tented area, and then the drones would come down and...
Please take your time. We're incredibly grateful.
So the drones would come down and pick off civilians, children, and we had...
All ammunition is high velocity. No, like, there is such a thing as low velocity ammunition, isn't there? It comes from like handguns and but I don't know how many people... I'm convinced some of the photos are fake. No, they've been verified. The problem isn't the photos being fake. They're not fake. If you think they're intact bullets and there's like the skulls are not like shattered or whatever by maybe what you expect from like a sniper rifle, that's probably because it would have been like, maybe in some cases like bullets flying through walls or flying through something that would stop them. Because yeah, like urban warfare is mental. Urban warfare is a total state. Like it's, there are bullets flying through walls. There are people running past windows. There are people running in and out of like combat, like in the line of fire in combat zones. Not to mention there are tunnels underneath everything. Like yeah, it's just, it's the perfect environment for people to make mistakes or to just be trigger happy or to panic or to even, it's also the perfect environment for war criminals to just get away with it, because that's obviously happened as well.
Description after description. This is not, you know, an occasional thing. This was day after day after day.
Ooh,
operating
shit.
On children.
Sorry, not the game, not the guy.
I was lying on the ground after a bomb had dropped, and this quadcopter came down and hovered over me and shot me. And that's clearly a deliberate act, and it was a persistent act, persistent targeting of civilians day after day. We had 1 or 2 mass casualty incidents every day, and that meant 10 to 20 dead, 20 to 40 seriously injured.
Just hunting Palestinian children for sport. It's pure terrorism. The Israelis also have a history of murdering Palestinian civilians by running them over with bulldozers and tanks. Recall the story of the killing of Kamal Zair.
Weird, we've never seen a video of these drones in action. I don't know if we have. I don't know. I don't know about that story. But that's a doctor giving... He was a doctor, wasn't he? He was giving like a witness statement. So no, I don't know what he's referring to there. I don't know like the details of that story. Not going to comment either way until I've read more about it. Whoa.
From April of 2002. Israeli tanks shot and killed him and then proceeded to run him over. He was 57 years old, wheelchair bound, and waving a white flag. Another prominent case of this was Rachel Corrie, a 23-year-old American peace activist who was murdered by an Israeli bulldozer while protesting the destruction of Palestinian homes in Gaza. Israelis, for years after her murder, celebrated...
Didn't Ben Shapiro mock this person, didn't he? I don't actually know her story. 2002, second Intifada. Yeah, I remember Ben Shapiro made some ridiculous joke about this person. He could use a more recent example as well. There was that Turkish American girl who was shot. It was in the middle of a fight, but I think the fighting had been dying down.
Health warning. And
I think it was after the fighting had died down and the protesters had backed off after they were throwing stones at the IDF. And then she had got shot after that. I don't actually know what came out of that investigation, but Rachel Corrie was lying down in front of a bulldozer and the guy didn't know she was there. Okay. Huge if true, but I don't know.
The day by making pancakes with Rachel Corrie's face painted into them. In the latest escalation, individual Israeli soldiers have admitted to committing these atrocities by the hundreds. The only reason we have these admissions is because Western outlets have written
that quote what did he say? You can't pause enough. The problem with what he's doing though is like, you realize that even if every single thing Noah was saying here was completely true, right? And the only ones I'm not really contesting are the ones I haven't read about all that much. So, but the ones that I do know about, I know that it's not the way he's describing it. His summary of the March of Return is insane. It is just disinformation to frame it in that way. His citing of that New York Times article about Israeli snipers intentionally targeting kids is also not that. The New York Times article that he brought up doesn't say snipers. One witness said someone was sniped. One witness. But the idea that there's like some kind of like widespread activity, that came from Perlmutter. That came from the doctor whose only evidence was that he said this was high velocity ammunition, which is not proof that it was snipers. Not even close. The New York Times article doesn't say that any substantial number of these were snipers. They just say one witness said one of them was a sniper. So I can read about the ones that he's talking about and know that they're wrong, but also like it doesn't take away from the fact that the IDF has committed war crimes in Gaza. Of course they have. Like, and it's not just that they've committed it in like a bad apple sense. It's that they've committed it in the sense that they know they can get away with it. They know that all the way up to division commanders, right? Division commanders like in the Netzarim corridor are okay with soldiers being far more trigger happy and more snappy with their decisions than would be legally permissible, right? We know that's happened. We know that people are getting away with committing atrocities, and that the worst punishment people get for these kind of acts is like, generally it's a slap on the wrist, maybe a year or two in jail. So we know all that. But the problem with what Noah's doing here is even if you assume everything he's saying is true and that this is like all the horrible things Israel has done throughout the conflict, do you understand that you can do the exact same thing for Palestinian activity, right? You realize that I could make an equivalent of this video and say, well, it goes back to the Nakba. I don't even need to go to the Nakba. I can say, oh yeah, this Palestinian Arab tendency of just never, ever, ever, ever accepting a Jewish presence in this region, wanting to stop Jewish immigration, like all the leaders wanting to completely halt Jewish immigration from as early as 1920, let alone during the Holocaust and everything else, but also using violence against civilians to achieve it. So I could talk about 1929 with the Hebron massacre, okay? I can talk about 1920 with the Nabi Musa riots, the Jerusalem riots, where Palestinian leaders incited a mob to go and murder Jews and killed like 5 people in the middle of a protest about Jerusalem, right? And the chant was, what was it? Palestine is ours, the Jews are our dogs. I could talk about the Arab Revolt where they targeted civilians. I could talk about during the Nakba, right? I can talk about how before people were getting ethnically cleansed from villages, I could talk about how Jerusalem was under siege. And the Jews who lived in Jerusalem were at risk of starving to death by not just the Arab Legion in Jordan, but also by the ALA, by al-Husseini's guys, right? I could talk about the massacres in Kfar Etzion, where a bunch of like Jews surrendered in the West Bank, in a village in the West Bank, and were murdered anyway in the hundreds, okay? So you can go through all of these different things. Talk about the Fedayeen and how they targeted civilians. You can talk about before the Israelis went into Lebanon for the first time, it was after the Coastal Road massacre, where the PLO found a bus just north of Tel Aviv and then captured it and then killed like a bunch of civilians, like dozens of them. I could talk about the Malot massacre. You can talk about all these different things all the way up until October 7th. And you can do a very convincing hour-long video just cataloging. You can talk about the Second Intifada, or like when those 2 Israeli people got lost in Ramallah and asked for help from the locals and got lynched, right? There's so much you can go into. The suicide bombings, right? They were intended to get civilians. They would intentionally go into areas that were crowded, full of civilians, women, children, families, and then blow them the up, right? You can talk about how Palestinian armed resistance for most of the Israel-Palestine conflict has meant terrorize the out of Jewish people who live here, civilian or otherwise, until they leave. Until the Russian Jews go back to Russia, until the Poles go back to Poland, until the Ethiopians go back to Ethiopia, until, yeah, like all of that. Nasrallah says this openly as well when he tried to egg on the Second Intifada. So I can go over all of this, right? And I would not be telling a good story. Even though every single fact in there is true. Every single fact I just told you about Palestinian terrorism is true. But that does not mean, that doesn't tell you anything about the conflict. It doesn't tell you anything. And Noah's doing the same thing, just in the other way around. And actually, to back up one thing that Ethan said, I don't agree with everything he says, but to back up one thing, he is completely correct when he says that this kind of all or nothing maximalist mindset, for me, is the reason this conflict is never ending, because this is how Israelis and Palestinians see it as well, unfortunately. It unfortunately just shows you how no side is willing to concede anything. No one wants to concede anything on the conflict. Everything just gets polarized. And then the concept of reconciliation and peace and like reparation is just, it's out the window, because everyone feels like they're the victim that's owed something, or their side is the one that like needs to win completely. Otherwise the other side will wipe them off the face of the earth. There is merit on both sides of that argument. There's a merit on the Israeli side as well. Palestinians and their leadership have a lot more agency in this conflict than people like Noah would have you believe. But yeah, but that's why, like, if you see it in this way, in this all or nothing way, then the only way that ends is one side wipes the other one off the face of the earth. And you can guess who would win in that scenario. Is that all right? Are you banned on Twitch? Don't think so. Anyway. But Israel used its full firepower. Yeah, I don't really want to know what it would look like if they used their full firepower. The difference, only one side historically accepted coexistence. You're doing it again. Like, okay. Well, like they accepted two-state solutions. Well, the first partition plan that the Israelis accepted is they didn't actually accept it. They accepted 37 as a concept, as a principle, but they didn't actually accept the exact plan. They voted to continue pushing for a negotiated version of the plan because they wanted more land. It also would have included the expulsion of 200,000 people. The UN partition plan, they accepted it. They all knew it was never going to go through, that it was going to be a war instead. So however sincere they were about that and what they were going to do with it, who knows? And they still also, when they accepted the 47 partition plan, the Israeli leaders met up, okay? They met up and decided in the cabinet that one thing that they were quite likely to do in the case of partition actually going through would be to deny citizenship to the Arabs who lived in the Jewish state, which would have been like 45% of them, right? And the point in them doing that would be that if there was any hostility, then they could just deport them. They actually considered not giving citizenship at all to Arab citizens in the Jewish state. What's your source for that? Benny Morris. It's the first edition of The Birth of the Palestinian Refugee Problem, I believe. Yeah, they were initially planning on not giving citizenship to the Arabs in Israel. Yeah.
Health warning.
Because they wanted to... Whoa. Because they wanted to have the option of expelling them. And you can't expel citizens. So, I'm just saying... And obviously, Camp David... Alright, yeah, they did accept a peace process in the 90s. And then continued to expand settlements, okay? Even Barak was okay with some settlements expanding. So no, there's still responsibility to be accepted on either side. Like, you don't need to respond to every single like failure on one side with but we like stop. Yeah, it's just annoying. Okay.
Face painted into them. In the latest escalation, individual Israeli soldiers have admitted to committing these atrocities by the hundreds. The only
Oh yeah, the atrocities. I think the guy's talking about killing terrorists, isn't he, in that quote?
Individual.
On many occasions, soldiers had to run over terrorists dead and alive in the hundreds. So currently, even them talking about killing terrorists is an atrocity to Noah Samsen. Okay, interesting.
Israeli soldiers have admitted to committing these atrocities by the hundreds. The only reason we have these admissions is because Western outlets have written articles with concerns over how the mass murdering affects these soldiers' mental health. Another element to the case that Israel is committing genocide is its continuous intentional deprivation of the basic necessities for life for Palestinians in Gaza. They've been using starvation as a weapon of war, a war crime, and a crime against humanity. Most recently, Israel's response to the quote-unquote ceasefire in Gaza is to continue this mass starvation while explicitly stating it as a matter of policy. They have blocked humanitarian aid throughout the genocide in violation of international law, the ceasefire orders, and the ICJ's provisional measures against genocide. The pretext they've fabricated for this policy of intentional starvation is that Hamas is looting these aid trucks. They have provided no evidence for this claim. What we do have evidence for is that Israel has protected...
I believe the evidence for Hamas looting aid trucks is armed gunmen on top of the trucks and locals saying that Hamas looted trucks. Isn't it? Okay, rip. Oh, is this Israel doing it by allowing gangs to loot? Okay. Me. Oh, I know this article. It's from Haaretz. Yeah, we have gangs doing it. Yeah. Is he going to mention that some of these aid organizations didn't want the IDF to protect them because it would make them into targets? Did they say that? That they didn't want... some of these people rejected IDF escorts. But he's going to blame Israel for that, for Gazan gangs looting trucks and extorting fees.
Protected and supported criminal gangs with ties to ISIS in areas that Israel has full control over, and these groups have been looting aid trucks. Israel is intentionally depriving Palestinians in Gaza of access to clean water. Oxfam reported that Israel has destroyed over 1,000 miles of water and sanitation networks, leaving less than 7% of pre-war water levels in Rafah and North Gaza. Israel has also partially or entirely destroyed over 80% of water and sanitation infrastructure in Gaza, including all 6 of its mainline wastewater treatment.
Israel-ISIS collusion. Based? Unbelievably based. Nice little subtle reference there.
Plants. Brutal, violent attacks on the healthcare system are another aspect of the genocide. They've damaged or destroyed every single hospital in Gaza and murdered countless medical workers, doctors, nurses, rescue workers, and healthcare staff. They've kidnapped doctors and held them without charge, where they've been tortured. Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, Gaza's leading orthopedic surgeon, was kidnapped by Israeli soldiers, brought to an Israeli prison, and then reportedly raped to death. The latest UN reports have concluded that over 90% of the buildings in Gaza have been severely damaged or completely destroyed. If you watch any of the footage coming out of Gaza, this is made quite clear. Israel's destruction includes every single school, hospital, mosque, cultural center, church, residential areas. Everything has been...
Who is he arguing with? Ethan calls it a genocide. Yeah, but he didn't mention it in his content nuke, so Noah's assuming that he doesn't believe it anymore. I don't know. Or because he called it a war. Apparently genocide and war can't happen at the same time, I guess. I don't know.
Been bombed. It's estimated that it will take a minimum of 15 years to remove the debris and unexploded ordinances from the Gaza Strip. That's just removing it, by the way, not rebuilding.
Didn't Egypt say that it would take... The Egyptians said it would take them like 6 months. Or the total, I think, was 5 years, but that... I think the initial phase of removing debris was 6 months. How do estimates go from 6 months to 15 years? How long did it take for them to remove the debris in places like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, or Berlin after World War II, or Stalingrad, or yeah. I hate so much that they can't own the position that they support Hamas. I think Noah Samsen sincerely doesn't believe that he's supporting Hamas by saying all this. Well, we'll get to that, maybe.
In September, the UN released an estimate that because of Israel's illegal and inhumane blockade around Gaza, which regularly limits the transfer of things like concrete into the Strip, fully rebuilding Gaza will take 350 years. Gaza is about 25 miles long and
350... Bro, I feel like these guys they talk like this is the first time they've ever seen a war, or they've ever read about a war. But if you look at some of the things that happened in World War II, and the urban warfare that took place there. And these are areas, remember, Stalingrad, for example, did not have, the people who lived there did not have 17 years to prepare for an invasion, right? There is no equivalent to that, to the amount of concentration of like tunnels and military infrastructure that they have in Gaza, right? Like the Viet Cong is not comparable because it's obviously it was spread over a wider space and often in the jungle and like, so, but yeah, apparently in the time it took to like build most of the United States, it's 350 years. What the f, man? Why? Why do the numbers have to keep on going up? Like it's comical. It's like he's making it funny. I don't know why. Like why are you doing this? Why is he having an effect? Like why is he? It's tragic. It's like the situation in Gaza. Even if you blame Hamas, like even if you're a proper full-on BB simp and you blame Hamas like 100% for all of it, like even then you would surely like have to admit, if you were still a human being at that point, that you have to like what happened there is like completely like atrocious. Like it's disgusting. But Noah's making it like 350 years. Okay.
5 miles wide. It is one of the most densely populated areas on Earth. It is in this area that Israel has dropped equivalent to that of multiple nuclear weapons. Israel has done this with full knowledge that over half the population of Gaza is children. So no, this isn't just a case where 40,000 people died. A lot more than that happened. One of the most tragic elements of the Gaza genocide is that, as crucial as it may be for the factual record and eventually holding the perpetrators accountable.
Now, I think some of these left-wing creators who go on this will challenge at least the claims that they'll try to say, like, they'll try to combat the idea that Hamas militarizes all this infrastructure, and that the reason so many buildings get destroyed is because, like, how do you think Hamas fights, or how do you think any urban war happens? It's door-to-door fighting. So if you fight door-to-door, and one side has tanks, and would rather fire a tank at the empty building that's got like a couple of soldiers in it and a tunnel underneath, than send their soldiers into a meat grinder, then you have to contend with that. But I wonder if he will. The last time I saw him do a video on genocide denial in Gaza, I don't think he mentioned Hamas once. Maybe right near the end.
Merely recounting these statistics does not afford Palestinians the dignity of humanity. They are simply reduced to numbers, to tens of thousands of names on a registry, as if they aren't human beings with dreams, hopes, hobbies, interests, and love for the people around them. If you've had this feeling as well, I want to recommend a book. It's called If I Must Die. It's written by renowned Palestinian poet, author, and teacher Dr. Rafat Al-Arir. It's full of stories and poetry and history about life, or rather survival, in Gaza during occupation and genocide. It is beautifully written and humanizing beyond anything you'll ever get from most coverage of Gaza, especially in the West. I have a friend from Gaza. His name's Ahmed Sarsour, and he's a very talented poet. We got in contact on social media, and when I read his work, it moved me in a very similar way to the way Dr. Rafat's words have. Ahmed has a sister, Rania. She is a mother and a gynecologist from Gaza and is seeking help after being displaced in February of last year. She and her children were forced to flee their home, and her life was further devastated when her home and her family members' homes were destroyed. She gave birth to her baby Rose in a hospital without proper care and no anesthetic, and now faces a dire situation with limited resources. I've linked your fundraiser in the description. Support if you can. The funds raised will go towards essentials like diapers, baby formula, medicine, basic living items, rent, and travel expenses for relocation. Another friend of mine, Ahmed Matar, is a 27-year-old inventor from Gaza. He makes these brilliant videos showing the process of constructing creative inventions to use in order to survive in Gaza. After the so-called ceasefire was implemented, Ahmed and his family returned to their home in the north only to find that it had been looted, vandalized, and destroyed by the occupation forces. Support his...
Why is it the so-called ceasefire? Okay. The thing is, I don't really like to do this thing where people psychoanalyze YouTubers as they're watching their content, but like, it seems quite clear that like Noah does care a lot about like the human aspect of what's happening. But I don't know if he just thinks like reading these headlines about human rights reports gives him like the broad understanding that he needs, or that he thinks that he knows all about the history because of because he can mention the Nakba or something like that. But it's like, I feel like if you made the whole video like this of just talking about like the human stories and promoting fundraisers, like that would be completely like unobjectionable. But the fact that he has to inject like all this like nonsense into it, especially in a video where he's like supposed to be dunking on like Ethan and Mutahar and Turkey Tom and like, he has listened to 3+ podcasts on the history of Israel, all from the same person. It's one of those things that I told you, like you can have a pretty in-depth knowledge about the conflict, but like the problem is that so much of the popular commentary on this will only tell you everything about the conflict from one side. That guy, Rifat, he was written about in the New York Times. This was him. I think he was killed. He was killed in an airstrike in Gaza, journalist. About humanizing, like the way, are we saying that he humanizes people, or it's just humanizing him and Palestinians? Because his Twitter feed, I remember, was absolutely insane. Just realized you're a Zio. Zios are heartless, brainless pieces of who conspired with the Nazis against the Jews. What else do we expect from Zios? Nothing. Okay. The thing he's referring to here is the Lehi, a group of 300 people in Mandate Palestine who tried to convince the Nazis to do a joint invasion of Mandatory Palestine to get the British out, and obviously failed. That's what he's talking about by Zios who conspired with the Nazis. Not quite as much of a conspiracy, and not quite as much conspiring as al-Husseini, but okay. Zios are the dirtiest little snitches ever, even when they disguise as journalists. No wonder many of them capoed like bitches. Zionists are scum. Israel is the root cause of evil. This is Israel far worse than Nazi Germany. Yeah, this guy's kind of unhinged. To be fair, Benny Morris thinks the Palestinians caused the Holocaust. Louis, you are lying. You are a liar. Benny Morris has literally said the Holocaust would have gone just exactly as it did, even without al-Husseini or Palestinians. Benny Morris does not say that. You're confusing him with Netanyahu, maybe. No, he obfuscated. Okay, let's get the clip up, shall we?
To think, yeah.
Come on, Norm. How big is this transcript? He said there was something there. Okay, let's have a look.
It would have been the dispossession of many Jewish people.
Not you.
Actions of the
One thing which stood out, and I think Moeen made this point, is that the Arabs had nothing to do with the Holocaust, but then the world community forced the Arabs to pay the price for the Holocaust. That's the traditional Arab argument. This is slightly distorting the reality. The Arabs in the 1930s did their utmost to prevent Jewish immigration from Europe and reaching Palestine, which was the only safe haven available, because America, Britain, France, nobody wanted Jews anywhere, and they were being persecuted in Central Europe, and
So far, that's all completely true.
eventually would be massacred in large numbers. So the Arab effort to pressure the British to prevent Jews reaching Palestine's safe shores contributed.
So did the US. Are you deaf? How stupid are you to say that? He literally said they wanted to prevent Jewish immigration when Israel, Palestine, was the only place that they could go. Yes, that would imply that every other country. He literally mentioned other countries not allowing people in. What the fuck's wrong with you? You're mental.
Indirectly to the slaughter of many Jews in Europe, because they couldn't get to anywhere and they couldn't get to Palestine because the Arabs were busy attacking Jews in Palestine and attacking the British to make sure they didn't allow Jews to reach this safe haven. That's important. The second thing is, of course, there's no point in belittling the fact that the Palestinian Arab National Movement's leader, Husseini, worked for the Nazis in the 1940s. He got a salary from the German Foreign Ministry. He raised troops among...
Now, the funny thing here is that Moeen tries to compare this to the Lehi. 300 people.
Muslims in Bosnia for the SS, and he broadcast to the Arab world calling for the murder of the Jews in the Middle East. This is what he did. And the Arabs since then have been trying to whitewash Husseini's role. I'm not saying he was the instigator of the Holocaust, but he helped the Germans along in doing what they were doing, and supported them in doing that. So this can't be removed from the fact that the Arabs, as you say, paid a price for the Holocaust, but they also participated in various ways in helping it happen.
Right. I'll make 2 points. The first is you mentioned Haj Amin al-Hussein.
Was that what you called? Okay, that's helped versus caused. Yeah, it was Kosovar Albanians. Yeah, I think Haj Amin al-Husseini recruited like quite a few thousand, didn't he? Yeah, he recruited people for the SS. Yeah, it's not a big deal. We were all young once.
Campaign if you can. I will leave these fundraisers as well as a link to Dr. Al-Arir's book in the description. The book is devastating though.
Oh, with Rifat's book. No, not the book. I think he was promoted in the New York Times. A poet who teaches Israeli poetry, they called him, like a humanizing whatever. But they had to do an editor's note because apparently when he does these lectures, he actually is very mean to Israeli poets. They had to do this massive editor's note. Okay, whatever.
Especially considering the fate of its author. Dr. Rifat was killed by Israel in a targeted assassination in December of 2023. He was killed alongside his brother Salah, with his son Muhammad and his sister Asma and 3 of her children. This came after having over 30 members of his and his wife's family slaughtered by Israel over the course of their lives. What these numbers also fail to communicate is the weight and depth the effects of this crime has had and will continue to have for generations. To speak only of the children of Gaza, they will forever hold the wounds and trauma caused by Israel's genocide in their minds.
Targeted with no evidence. I don't know if there's evidence that he was targeted, but it wouldn't surprise me if Israel targeted him, no? Like, Israel does, like, they do target... Israel does target journalists. They do, because they'll argue, and this is true to an extent, but I don't think it's as true as Israel tries to make it out to be. It's true to an extent that a lot of these, like, journalists, as described by the press, are like, it's just like a dude with a phone who is also a soldier or like supports Hamas's actions or even engages in incitement, right? But I don't think he's one of them. I don't think he engaged in a level of incitement through his journalism that deserved him being targeted. There are journalists who have done that. There are journalists who are like either Hamas affiliated or they're just like so pro-Hamas that they're just telling, like, they're just inciting war crimes through their coverage, in which case you are susceptible to targeting. But I don't think Rifat was one of those guys, unless anyone can show me any evidence. How many are embedded with Hamas? Well, think about it. If you're going to be a journalist in Gaza, chances are you're not going to have that much freedom of press unless you support Hamas, unless you are like, or at least friendly to them. So, I mean, Hamas have admitted this in the past. Like the amount of journalists, quote unquote, who were killed in Protective Edge. If you look through Hamas's martyr page, like for the military media section, where these are like double-edged, these are like soldiers and reporters. The list is quite big, actually. The list from 2014 is, there's like quite a few of them, maybe like a dozen or 24 journalists who are also soldiers that are claimed by Hamas. But I think for Israel, when they say Hamas journalist, I don't think they just mean journalists who are inciting violence or are also soldiers. I think for Israel, I think even a propagandist Hamas journalist is targetable, but which it shouldn't be. That's not legal. Like the Geneva Convention is very clear that doing propaganda, even for a terrorist group, that doesn't make you a target. So that would be like Mr. Fafo, like that guy, right? Like, I don't think there's any evidence that his journalism has crossed the threshold of him being a target.
And hearts. It was reported that when asked, over half of the children in Gaza expressed a desire to die. Many of them already held such wounds, though, of course. But in terms of sheer scale and intensity, what we're seeing now is incomprehensible, except to those experiencing it. Throughout these 17 months of genocide, the international community has left the people of Gaza to languish and die. If there's anything we've learned about Israel in the past 100 years, it's that there is no crime they can commit that won't go unpunished, up to and including genocide. In the latest escalation, again, the world has watched this happen, and
is glorifying martyrdom the threshold of crossing over into targetable? I don't think so. No.
Done nothing. And some have, of course, actively made this genocide possible. Most notably, that would be the United States government. The US and the Biden administration is fully complicit in this genocide. They've repeatedly sent billions of dollars in weapons shipments and provided military and diplomatic support. Over 80% of the killing machinery that has been used to slaughter Palestinians in Gaza has been provided by the United States government. They've also provided rhetorical and diplomatic support by whitewashing Israel's crimes against humanity, laundering Israeli atrocity propaganda, and denying and dismissing genocide allegations. That last one should come as no surprise, given that a genocide ruling against Israel does also implicate the United States in the crime of aiding and abetting genocide, since they sent the bombs that made it possible. The ICC is already being urged to investigate Joe Biden and Antony Blinken for their role in perpetrating this very...
This video is allegedly about the nuke. It's about YouTubers who defend genocide. He's just setting you up. He's just... Okay, if it's a video essay, you guys are so stupid. The point would be to make the case first and then be like, look at what these people have to say about it. Like, I would do that. The structures, there's nothing wrong with the structure of this video so far. It's just the content that's a bit goofy at times. Silly. Wrong.
Crime. These actions have shown the U.S. to be acting in violation of both domestic and international laws by sending weapons to a regime that is actively and intentionally blocking access to humanitarian aid against a civilian population that they are occupying, and ignoring the arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court against Netanyahu and Gallant. This is just another plot on the long chart of the U.S. and Israel's position as rogue states in the international community. There's a comment I saw on Ethan Klein's video.
Rogue states. Holy shit. Okay.
It read, I feel like a lot of people can't separate Israelis and the Israeli government, and the same with the other side. Like you are allowed to hate on the people who actually kill people and not hate the innocent adults and children that are being killed from both sides.
Both sides?
This is a popular framing among liberals and liberal outlets that we should separate the Israeli people from the actions of their government. While there are some examples from the past where this may be true, such as the case of the American public's attitudes towards the end of the Vietnam War, which diverged from their government. The
Israelis support the genocide. Okay, let's go.
Not be said in the case of Israel. The vast majority of the Israeli public supports this genocide. Months into the genocide, polling showed that over 95% of Jewish Israelis supported the IDF's actions, with a majority of those indicating that the IDF was not using enough force in Gaza. The force in question there being
genocide.
Yeah, they wanted more. It wasn't enough, apparently. 17 months later, and nothing has really changed. Just weeks ago, polling indicated that the Trump administration's plan to facilitate the ethnic cleansing of Gaza.
Less than 15% of Israelis believe Trump's plan is immoral, including 54% of Arab respondents. Really, to 4 years. How many 4 years think the Trump plan is a good idea? Holy How many times is he going to say genocide? What can I say? It's a very good way to not let people... it's unarguable, isn't it? Genocide.
Was supported by over 80% of Israelis. This headline refers to Israelis as a whole, but that 80% support statistic is actually only the perspective of Jewish Israelis. A majority of Palestinians with Israeli citizenship, or Arab Israelis, as the Israeli...
It's a very small majority, though. He's not going to comment on that? Why would only 54... Can you imagine if 54% said relocating 2 million people is immoral? He's not going to comment on that? He's not going to on those guys? Take him down, Noah. That's mental.
The government tries to call them, considers this ethnic cleansing plan to be immoral. When it comes to Jewish Israelis, however, that number drops to just 3%. This should come as no surprise, given Israel's history. A country that exists on the logic of ethnic supremacy and colonization requires a certain level of dehumanization to keep its inhabitants from collapsing under the weight of the reality of their rotten society. Another way to get a handle on the seemingly ubiquitous genocidal fervor among Israelis is by just talking to them.
How many civilians have been killed in Gaza, from what you know?
Who gives a
Okay, but don't you feel like, for example, children?
Children grow up to
Oh yeah, just so you know, this person is not the quintessential Israeli. Sorry. Like
Arabs.
This person is pretty mask off.
My memory died and went to heaven. I don't think...
What do you mean, of course it is? What? You think the average Israeli position on how many civilians have died is, I don't give a them. No. Even the ones who don't, maybe they don't care that much, but even the ones who are more right-wing would generally say something like, hey, oh, you know, it's tragic, but of course Hamas is using human shields, blah, blah, blah. That's more like what they would say. They wouldn't just say, who gives a shit? Like,
children should suffer, but they're always casualties. And since they do a lot of pru-urvu, that is the natural result.
חפים מפשע נהרגו בעזה.
But the problem is like, if we're going to use Ask Project videos, again, it's like the propagandist thing. Because I could just as easily go and grab a bunch of Ask Project videos of them going through the West Bank and asking, what happens after the conflict ends? And like, oh, all the Jews leave, right? Or their opinions on Hasan al-Husseini, who supported Hitler. Oh, they're all, I think he's a great leader, really good leader. What do you think about Hitler, right? Because what do you think about trans people? You can do all of this as well, but it doesn't tell, it's not useful. You're actually, it's almost to the degree where when you give people this much information, but all of it is only from one side, then you're actually kind of giving people like negative knowledge almost, because it's just so much nonsense that they have to dislodge before they can actually have an understanding of what's really happening there. Oh.
את לא רוצה לענות על זה?
תודה.
אוקיי, אפשר לשאול למה?
כי אני לא חושבת שיש מישהו שהוא חף פשע שם.
אבל ילדים אבל, נגיד.
הילדים מסכנים, אין ספק, אבל הם לא יגדלו להיות ילדים חפים מפשע.
Whoa, don't die.
Most of the kids there that are getting killed, I never support little children dying, you know? I never want it. But most of them will grow up not only supporting Hamas, which is a crime by itself, but joining them, which is the worst of the worst.
בפשע נהרגו בעזה.
לא, זה גם לא מעניין אותי.
לא? למה?
לא מעניין אותי. אני הייתי עד 7 באוקטובר האמנתי בשלום ובשיח ובדו-שיח. אחרי זה הבנתי שאין לי מי לדבר. כולם שם מחבלים. לצערי הרב.
אבל ילדים, כאילו.
לא, אני אומרת בכנות, לא מעניין אותי.
There is no such thing as Palestinians. They're Arabs who have many countries to flee to and nobody wants them to. But if we do call them Palestinians, their parents use them as human shields.
Human shields?
To gain sympathy. The natural instinct of a Jewish mother is to protect her child. Palestinian women do not have that.
These people know that they're on camera and that these remarks will be posted on the internet or shared on the mainstream news. This is normal to them. This is normal in their society, which is a testament to the fact that their society is not normal. It's typically bad form to cite street interviews as being some meaningful indicator of widespread.
Yeah, but you're going to do it anyway, buddy. Let's do it anyway. And let's just get really appalled when assholes like Traveling Israel do the same thing for the Arab world, when they run around and get survey data from the entire Middle East, not just Palestine, and talk about the anti-Semitism that comes from there, or how many state medias in these countries will just air videos that claim to be historically accurate, but are really just like rewrites of the protocols of the Elders of Zion. Now we won't do that though. That's dehumanizing when we do it that way. Stop Hasan pausing when he's mid-sentence, bro. Has me pausing? Okay, if I jump to a conclusion and press play, and it turns out the conclusion I said was completely wrong, I'll acknowledge it, okay? But that's yet to happen.
Spread attitudes. But again, with Israel, it's just different. Not just because these attitudes align perfectly with the wider Israeli polling data, but also because it's almost impossible to find anyone in Israel saying anything else. The amount of truly anti-Zionist Israelis living in Israel numbers in the hundreds.
What? It's impossible to find an Israeli who doesn't give a fuck about dead civilians on the Palestinian side. Look, we got one in chat. We got a live one. Lonerbox, didn't you stop streaming and left crying like a bitch because some Hasan fans were critical of your Zionism? No, but thanks for asking it, like an honest question. Never said I was quitting streaming. Never said my taking a break, because that's all it was because of Hasan. I actually said the complete opposite. So, you know, I'm sorry that your favorite creators are liars and you fall for it. And you're basically making people rich by being a gullible, cum-guzzling piece of shit. Anyway.
This figure is according to anti-Zionist Israelis themselves. They are alone.
Everyone around us are...
No offense to cum guzzlers, you know, it's like... it's a real decent human thing to do. Where are the massive protests in Israel in support of Palestine?
Health warning.
Okay. There are protests in favor of ceasefire. It's like after October 7th, or even like after the second Intifada, it's like asking me to find... It's like asking me to find like any pro-Israel or even pro-Jew protests in Palestine. Like, what the...
Completely genocidal maniacs. Everyone around you. And I don't mean it metaphorically. It's not metaphorically. It's literally everybody. It will be your family. It will be your teachers. It will be your colleagues. Everyone around you. So you're alone.
Just remember, like, there was a time, not that long ago, people in Israel were en masse and even voting in people who supported a Palestinian state. That wasn't even that long ago. The problem is that they supported that, they voted for that, and in the end they got the second Intifada. So if you're a left-winger in Israel, it's quite hard to make that argument when there are suicide bombings happening around you, right? When you vote for one thing and then the outcome is that. There were mass protests after Sabra Shatila. I believe some of the biggest, actually, in Israeli history were after Sabra Shatila, defined en masse, while they voted in a government that was willing to negotiate for a Palestinian state. You're not seeing the peace rally? Like, that's where Yitzhak Rabin was killed. He was killed at a peace rally. You're no different from Ben Gvir. I know you think that. That's okay. And there's nothing I can say that's going to change your mind on that, because you're mental, okay? If you think I'm different from Ben Gvir, then yeah, well done. Like, thank you for having a perspective that just results in the conflict never ever ending. You think Ben Gvir supports a Palestinian state like I do? Wow. Like, just, yeah, keep on saying things to confirm how stupid you are.
Even if we will gather all of those anti-Zionists together from Jerusalem.
But yeah, they think that like they think like the only good position here for an Israeli is to be anti-Zionist, is to want to destroy your own country. They don't think end the war, two-state solution. That's not good enough for these guys, right?
Tel Aviv or Haifa or whatever, it will not be more than, I don't know, 500?
There's no tangible internal opposition within the country. The Israeli left is a myth. This is reflected once more in the openly genocidal sentiment we see on social media from IDF terrorists who have been willingly, gleefully, posting their own war crimes on the internet for everyone to see for a year and a half.
They go into the homes of Palestinians, and they're often clearly staying there, and they just smash them up, and they film themselves smashing them up. They also delight in going through women's underwear drawers, and this is a sort of recurring obsession. You have to see Israeli soldier videos in the context of the broader output of Israeli society.
If you gave me a button.
I love this generalization as well. It's so mad. Like this is a recurring obsession. Like, of how many thousands of soldiers are there? To assume that this is like, and even these guys don't really have a very big podcast, and there's still, it's like everything any Israeli does is just like indicative of the entire society. It's wild.
To just erase Gaza.
Why are they doing that? Because the IDF is a bunch of, first of all, they're quite young. They are hateful, obviously, because especially since the second intifada on October 7th, it's like broken their brains completely. And also just like the country growing more increasingly right-wing over the last 25 years. And it's not punished, not severely anyway. I think the people who photograph themselves with underwear, I think there were some people who were kicked out of the army for that or were reprimanded. But yeah, it's a whole list of things. There's like a lack of accountability and lack of punishment. There's just like a general culture. There's just the nature of how conscription is done in the IDF, and the fact that they're all quite young, and you know young people are like, they're dogmatic, they're hateful. Yeah, I believe that protocol of doing that as well, like taking pictures, like taking your phone into Gaza and taking a picture of where you like broadcasting your whereabouts as well is also like, even for just like a self-preservation thing, that's probably seen as a bad idea. No, I've heard people I can't remember who I heard talk about this, but I heard someone saying that even like from a military perspective, it's like really dangerous to do that. Like you're putting yourself and your unit and your like allies in danger by just like by doing that, let alone obviously the dehumanization that you're engaging in too. It's dumb when people are trying to catch IDF soldiers traveling internationally. You know.
Every single living being in Gaza would no longer be living tomorrow. I would press it in a second. I would press it right now. Give me that button and press it right now.
There you go.
And I think most Israelis would.
There's an Israeli song called "This Was My Home." And what they would do is dress up as caricatures of obviously what they perceive Palestinians to be, being sung mockingly to people who no longer have homes.
Have female soldiers publicly engaged in this? Not that I've seen. There's that one image of that tiny little woman with a gun marching a bunch of prisoners down a road. Hey, Alan Green, if you aren't feeling like so much of a coward, you can come and argue your positions to me, but otherwise, take care. Ugh.
We're not looking at some sort of obscure subculture within Israeli society. This is mainstream Israeli society.
People have been keeping tabs on this. There are a number of archives documenting the names and crimes of these Israeli terrorists.
Shit.
One of the most thorough of these databases was created by a historian, Lee Mordecai. It's called Bearing Witness to the Israel-Gaza War. It is presently over 120 pages long with extremely detailed footnotes.
Whoa,
There's that one tweet that's hitting translate from Hebrew on Twitter
No,
is like discovering a lost page from Mein Kampf. This holds up pretty well. Here, let's try it on this tweet.
I love
the survivors of the
Nazi,
2025.
The Nazi shit is so funny, man. Like, does he not realize what he's doing?
Holocaust are proof that every trace of the murderous mutations in Gaza must be erased, from delivery rooms to the last elderly person in Gaza. 100% dead in Gaza. That there is Barashi Kinneret, the host of a mainstream Israeli news channel. One more example that I found particularly striking was the Right to Rape protests. A group of Israeli prison guards were placed under investigation after security camera footage.
Yeah, this one was mental. There was like this was like when there was a politician went there, didn't he? There was one of those right-wing politicians who went to support this protest. They were against the detention of those guys. The 9 guys who were who were detained. Yeah, they were detained in that area for sexual violence against prisoners, among other things. We read that report when it came out, this Daytime report, about the amount of shit that they had done about how someone had to have like one of their, it was either their hand or their foot amputated because the zip ties that they'd used to bind them were so tight that it cut their circulation off and they had to have a amputation.
Footage leaked showing them gang raping a Palestinian prisoner. The Israeli public reacted in uproar, not because of what they were alleged to have done, but because they were potentially going to be punished for it. Protests were held outside of the prison, attended by top Israeli officials. Mainstream Israeli news channels brought on one of the alleged rapist soldiers for interviews, supporting him and his right to...
Someone, I can't remember, someone told me this wasn't... Was this him or was this his brother? Someone told me this was his brother, but I don't actually... Yeah, none of this is about the content nuke anymore. Noah's gone his own way. It's the clickbait thing. Yeah, Channel 14's not mainstream. Channel 14 is like Ben Gavir land, isn't it? That's one of the soldiers involved. Okay, so it is, yeah.
Kill and rape Palestinian hostages. Again,
no, Channel 14 is not Fox News. Channel 14 is like Truth Social. It's not like, was it news? What's the Trump one? The really bad OAN. Info. Yeah, it's mental. It's mental.
This wasn't some extremist fluke. It was reflected in broader polling of the Israeli public. According to a poll taken around that time, 65% of Israeli Jews oppose criminal prosecution for soldiers.
And quite a lot of Arab Israelis felt this as well, because this was not a dispute about whether or not they should get punished. This was a dispute about whether or not they should go through military court because they committed those crimes when they were in the military, or if it should be like a civilian criminal case. That was the difference. More people felt like it should be for military court.
Suspected of raping Palestinian detainees. And 47% of Jewish Israelis answered that Israel does not need to abide by international law and maintain moral values in the war. Simply put, it's a genocidal society, top to bottom. Perhaps the most complicit party to enabling this genocide, aside from the material support of Western governments, is the Western media. As previously mentioned, this support largely takes two forms. The more overt kinds, like spreading misinformation, an explicit Israeli state and IDF.
Oh, we're gonna get to Mutahar and all those guys, right? Surely.
Propaganda. And the other more subtle, yet significantly more frequent and effective, is that of manufacturing consent. Reporting on Palestinians has some clear differences in coverage, language, and framing when compared with other groups. In the first 100 days after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, 262 children were killed. In the first 100 days of Israel's assault on Gaza, more than 10,000 children were killed. The true number is likely much higher, but mentions of child deaths and related terms were 33.4% higher for Ukraine than for Gaza. During this time frame, CNN mentioned child victims of the war 2,446 times for Ukraine versus 2,110 times for Gaza, and MSNBC mentioned child victims of the Ukraine war 1,775 times versus 1,522 times for Gaza.
So you're gonna mention that the true number for Ukraine is also higher? I don't know.
Gaza. This means that for each child death from Ukraine, children receive the equivalent of 16.1 mentions on air, whereas children in Gaza receive the equivalent of 0.36 mentions. MSNBC did not run a single segment in the first 100 days that focused specifically and exclusively on the plight of children in Gaza. MSNBC ran over a dozen segments focusing specifically on the plight of Ukrainian children during the first 100 days of that conflict. Emotive language was barely ever used to describe the killing of Palestinians. This comes despite the vastly higher death toll over the same period. On CNN...
The higher death toll? Between Ukraine and Gaza? Or is he just talking about for children? Because I think as far as Ukraine goes, we have no idea how many children have died. We actually have no clue. The death toll in Ukraine is massively higher. Like, it's a higher. Even Mariupol. The estimates for Mariupol are what? Between sort of 20,000 and 75,000 for that one city that was besieged for a few months. Amount of time the words war crime or genocide were mentioned. Okay. Yeah, I think for the kidnappings, we know that Russia has kidnapped at least, I think it's just under 30,000 kids. Yeah. That's confirmed. With Mariupol, it's aerial footage of the maps, it's aerial footage of the mass graves outside the city.
In MSNBC, the words war crime and genocide were mentioned 17 times more in the context of Ukraine than in the context of Gaza. Ukrainian victims were labeled as subject to war crimes or genocide 1,790 times compared to just 104 mentions for Palestinians. And we still see this now, obviously. During the hostage exchanges as a result of the latest so-called ceasefire, for example, you may notice that Palestinians detained without charges in Israeli jails, of which there are thousands, they are referred to as prisoners, whereas the IDF soldiers, that is, actual militants that were captured by Hamas on October 7th, are referred to as hostages. One of the greatest tweets of all time that I've ever seen.
Yeah, but that's human rights organizations do that too. Are they wrong? You've been citing them for this entire video. Even the human rights orgs do that because detaining someone, internment, is not illegal under the Geneva Convention. In the context of occupation, it's not illegal. The way they can do it has problems because you're supposed to give them appeals processes and reviews, but detaining without charge is not in and of itself illegal. But hostage taking, which is what Hamas did, because Hamas haven't even tried to claim that they're doing some kind of like administrative detention or holding criminals or doing something in the name of security. They have admitted that they're kidnapping these people so they can exchange them for prisoners. So yes, that's why one side is prisoners and the other side is hostages. Yeah, that's why.
Described the capture of an IDF terrorist during October 7th as him being kidnapped from a tank. Kidnapped from a tank. Kidnapped from a tank. Coverage has been focused almost exclusively on the condition of these IDF quote-unquote hostages, rarely making mention of Israel's contribution to their condition, like how they starve out the population of Gaza, which obviously affects all of the people in Gaza, including the Israeli hostages in Gaza, or the fact that they rain airstrikes on them all day, every day for 16 months straight. Is that good for your health? Is that healthy? The same cannot be said of coverage of the Palestinian hostages. Despite emerging from these Israeli jails with clear evidence of extreme physical abuse, images of the Palestinian hostages are rarely, if ever, shown. The assumption is just granted. It's relied on that they're terrorists, criminals, and whatever else. So whatever happens to them, that's just what happens in jail. The Western media lies in other subtle ways, like burying the lead in stories and deceptively framing headlines. This is especially apparent in coverage of things like ceasefire negotiations. These outlets have consistently framed the lack of agreement.
What did she do? What, the person in that video? I don't know. I think there's something that's kind of ironic about what he's doing is because the reason that we know about the treatment of Palestinian prisoners is because Israelis spoke up about it, right? Like the reason we know about Sdei Teiman was because it was confirmed by Israeli doctors. But the only way we found out about how people have been treated by Hamas under captivity is after they're released, right? Like, and after they're don't have a guy with a gun next to them telling them what to say or do. Unless we had anything otherwise, did we ever have anyone from Hamas going into the media and saying like that they disagree with the way that the hostages are being treated? So it's funny that he's talking about like a sick genocidal society or whatever, even though internal critique, a lot of this comes from within Israel, from people who are Zionists as well. Like not everyone who reports on atrocities by the IDF in Israel are anti-Zionists. A lot of them will be two-stayers or like Israeli left. Or even centrists. Israel's a democracy thing's bound to come out. Yeah, but that doesn't really suit Noah's narrative, though. There's a kind of like a bit of projection going on. Because again, it's just the fact that, and people do this, Traveling Israel does this, is that you can do everything Noah is doing right now, but just flip it and put it onto Gaza. Genocidal, sick society, like no accountability. Everyone thinks there's no opposition. Like you can do all of that with the right selection of information.
To terms as being Hamas's fault, that they won't agree to Israel.
Apostate prophet does do that, yeah.
Terms, but they interestingly decide to use only one definition of the ceasefire agreement, which is Israel's definition, that being one which is only temporary, with no guarantees that the genocide...
Ceasefires are always temporary. Like, a ceasefire is not the end to the war. Obviously, a ceasefire is temporary. What?
Will end after these temporary pauses. They're not really ceasefires, but in order to frame Hamas as disagreeing with them, that's what they have to call them. The ceasefire that ended up being agreed upon in January was the exact same ceasefire that Hamas had agreed to over 6 months prior.
No, it wasn't. It didn't involve Israel staying in the Philadelphia corridor in the first phase. Israel has a lot more control over the Strip in this deal than they did in the previous one. The differences are quite superficial for, well, not superficial, but they're not that massively pronounced for that much fighting. You'd think the fighting would have put Israel in a more strong negotiating position, but no, he's incorrect to say that it's the exact same one that Hamas accepted. Hamas accepted Biden's proposal after making a bunch of changes. And then that was the one ceasefire, the one in July, where the Americans admitted that they could have done better to push Israel to accept it. Like, in every other ceasefire, they blamed Hamas for tanking it. But for that one in particular, it was not pursued as aggressively by the Americans because of the election. They were anticipating the election. But no, that framing from Noah is not correct.
Israel continually sabotaged these negotiations, but if you read any of these mainstream outlets, you wouldn't know that, not until the very end of
According to who sabotaging all of these negotiations? Because the only people we hear from these negotiations are Qatari mediators, Egyptian mediators, and they'll usually tell you what Hamas people said, and from the Israeli government and from the Americans. Like, which side exactly are we believing when we try to say what's happening, with whose fault it is that there's not a ceasefire happening?
These articles, at least. The latest reporting on these negotiations continued this trend of misleading coverage, such as this story from early February. The majority of the article, headline included, frames Hamas as the instigator to a potential ceasefire failure. However, both independent observers and Israeli officials themselves acknowledged that it was actually Israel who had already broken the terms of the ceasefire agreement immediately after it was implemented. To anyone with a brain and eyes, this would be apparent given the evidence we have of these violations, but because these outlets didn't show the evidence we have immediately themselves to a potential ceasefire.
Imperiled as Netanyahu threatens to resume fighting. Is he talking about the current one? He's talking about the current one. Is he? Hang on. Gaza cease. It could be the November one, actually. Ceasefire imperiled as Netanyahu threatens. No, this is from this year. This is from this year. This is because, oh God, the way people play propaganda with ceasefires is so horrible. Both of them do it as well. Israel asked for an extension to phase 1 of the ceasefire to continue hostage exchanges. That's what Israel wanted to do. Hamas wants to jump to phase 2. So basically both sides get to accuse the other one of rejecting ceasefire, right? Because Israel isn't wanting to negotiate into phase 2 just yet, and Hamas doesn't want to extend phase 1. So both sides gets to accuse the other one of like hamstringing. It's so stupid. Ugh. They deserve each other, Netanyahu and whoever's in charge of Hamas now. What the
fire failure. However, both independent observers and Israeli officials themselves acknowledged that it was actually...
They said that Hamas claims were accurate. But Kogat, the Israeli military unit that oversees aid deliveries, said in a written response that Hamas's accusations were completely false. Which accusations? Mohammed Sinwar. Hang on. Is this from the same article? Why is he... That doesn't really say what he's saying it says. Where's the detail? Claims where... It's from this here. Why is Israel wanting to extend phase 1 valid? Why is I wanting to extend phase 1 valid? Because phase 2 has not really been negotiated at all. And it's probably valid because phase 2, as it stands now, just allows Hamas to rebuild, I think. I don't think the Israelis really want that. Because if Hamas rebuilds, especially when they keep saying we want to do October 7th again, who's that going to help? The current standoff stems in part from Hamas's accusation that Israel has not upheld its promises for the first phase. This is true in one place that I know, which is that Israel hasn't pulled out of the Philadelphia corridor. They were supposed to pull out of the Philadelphia corridor on the last day of phase 1. They were supposed to, they're supposed to start their pullout on the last day, but they haven't done that. So that's probably what they're talking about there. Israel is required to send hundreds of thousands of tents into Gaza, a promise Hamas says Israel has not kept. 3 official... Oh, so this is the claim, okay. This isn't about necessarily tanking the ceasefire, but... Okay. So I think Noah's kind of simplified that too much.
Actually, Israel, who had already broken the terms of the ceasefire agreement immediately after it was implemented. To anyone with a brain and eyes, this would be apparent given the evidence we have of these violations, but because these outlets didn't show their readers that and also prioritize the input of party committing genocide, this citation here is crucial for its readers. They need to see this to understand what's happening. But the New York Times waited to mention it until 9 paragraphs in, like basically the end of the article. This is a textbook example of bearing the lead, but it also goes beyond that into just a lie, right? The entire article is framed in precisely the opposite way of what this confirmed fact revealed. If the Times weren't...
What confirmed fact did you just show? Is Noah not going to mention that the extension of phase 1 is still on the table? It is? Okay. There's too much information for him. He can't handle it.
Weren't running cover for a genocide, the headline of this article would read, Israel violates ceasefire, confirmed...
So mental that even like, because people who are even more liberal people who are defensive of Israel will say the opposite about the New York Times. They'll say that the New York Times is using like their lack of military experience and commenting on the war in a way that's like irresponsible and shit, when they were talking about changed terms. An extension of phase 1 is de facto just an acceptance of a temporary ceasefire. Yeah, but who has more bargaining power now? It depends on what you think is like, if Hamas are put into the position where they should accept an extension of phase 1 and then just, I don't know, like, should they accept an extension of phase 1 or just go back to fighting? I would probably accept an extension of phase 1. The problem is that like the big elephant in the room here is that Hamas are still thinking, give up all leverage and get killed or just get killed. Tough choice. Okay. Maybe Hamas should just do one of two things, okay? I don't know why people think this is like a difficult concept. 1, stop trying to destroy Israel and say you're going to stop for a start, okay? 2, just give power. If you can't do 1, just give up power to someone else. Embrace the Egyptian plan and just be like, yeah, you want to take over reconstruction and governance and put it in the hands of people who are not quite so retarded, then yeah, go for that. And let the Hamas leaders live out the rest of their days with their buddies in Qatar, in a 5-star hotel in a jacuzzi, with all the money that they stole from their own people. The Egyptian plan was naysayed by Israel and the US. Yeah, why, Sulfur? Why? Because the Egyptian plan doesn't say anything about what to do about Hamas. Of course they don't support that. That's the problem. That's the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is that either you end the war, in which case Hamas just rebuilds and starts again, which is what they will do, which is what they've said they will do, or Hamas gets replaced. If Hamas doesn't want to get replaced, then you have to keep fighting them until they're replaced. And I'm sorry, I'm running out of alternatives to this proposal. Unless you want to give Gaza back to Hamas for another 20 years and just hope they do it differently. Even though they've told you they won't. I don't know, what do we think? What do we think? The issue is that the parties willing to replace them all have some Palestinian state as the demand for doing so. We can get to that, but the problem now is that the parties who are willing to replace Hamas are not willing to sign off on the fact that Hamas has to go. And Hamas will not go unless they are defeated militarily and politically. But yeah, if Israel gets rid of Hamas and actually leaves the space in Gaza for a new force to come in and take over, then the ball is completely in their court, and then people like Egypt get to take all the moral and like superiority in the world because they can say like, okay, Hamas are not threatening you anymore, they're done, like, this is what you wanted, now what next? Like, but they're not really in that position right now because Hamas have basically shown the world through these hostage exchanges that they are still good to go, and it doesn't really help. It doesn't really help the ceasefire negotiations. It doesn't really help the ceasefire negotiations if Hamas keeps on using these hostage exchanges to flex and showcase their will to keep on fighting. Egypt's proposal is insisting on a technocratic government and not Hamas. Show me that. Where did they say not Hamas? What? They did not say not Hamas. They just didn't say anything about Hamas. They said nothing. They dodged the question. They mentioned, they modeled it on Berlin and Hiroshima. They modeled it on Berlin and Hiroshima, which implies that they want some big bad military to finish the job against Hamas. Like that's because that's how that happened, right? The difference is that Hiroshima and Berlin obviously got pummeled to the point that the people in charge gave up. But we haven't had that in Gaza yet. Oh, me! Are you vanishing, you piece of shit? You! Hey! Roach! He roached me! We were 2 on 3! You!
Health warning.
I'm gonna... What the f***?
Health warning.
That guy tried to roach me.
Health warning.
Yes, I've read the entire 106-page
Health
plan.
warning.
They do not say in the positive or the negative what happens to Hamas.
Health warning.
You can interpret it as keeping Hamas in, or you can interpret it as them leaving. Like, you type that. Oh, okay.
By Israeli officials. Probably the most insane example of this sort of thing is the following headline, once again from the New York Times. Lebanon ceasefire.
Oh, okay. Pre-watch, he hasn't read the ceasefire terms. He doesn't know that Israel was given, because Hezbollah were so that Israel actually had the right. Israel had the right to carry on hitting Hezbollah if they thought that they weren't being appropriately dealt with by the UN and by the Lebanese army. Yeah.
Appears to hold despite Israeli strike. If Israel struck, they violated the ceasefire. The ceasefire...
No, that's not the terms of the ceasefire. You haven't read the ceasefire, Noah. Sorry. Why? Just read the terms of the ceasefire. Also, a strike, or even a handful of strikes isn't incompatible with a ceasefire. That's not incompatible at all. Some ceasefires can mean not a return to full-scale hostilities. Like they say, full-scale fighting. But even there, where is the... where did I take the ceasefire terms? I need to understand that what just happened was a big LSF clip, but unfortunately I can't. Oh. But my clipping option is on. My channel just isn't letting me do it anyway. Where is it? Is it this one? Oh, yeah, this is it. Let me clip chimp you. Yeah. Reserves. The letter is reported to note that should the terms of the agreement be broken in southern Lebanon, Israel reserves the right to act in any time. Where was is this the full text? This is the US side letter. Yeah. Israel has the right to act in response to threats from inside Lebanon in accordance with international law, which would mean a strike. So yes, the ceasefire can still hold with a strike. Because unfortunately, Hezbollah, and I guess Noah won't mention this, were not supposed to move people into the south with military installation, with military equipment, and they did anyway.
Not hold.
That's why.
Israel violated it. It's just absurd. The genocide is referred to almost exclusively as...
It's just absurd. It's absurd that this thing I don't understand is not going in the way that I'd expect it to.
As the Israel-Hamas war, like the Nazi Holocaust, Israel's genocide in Gaza has been conducted under the pretext of war, but the genocide aspect, of which there is again...
The pretext of war? The only difference is that when the Jews were rounded up, they were literally not doing anything. They did nothing. There's lots of differences, but okay.
Broad consensus has taken place is omitted from this framing. Every single article that mentions this so-called war should be immediately citing the expert consensus that it really is not just a war, that it's a genocide. That doesn't happen, though. Trump recently made a number of statements explicitly supporting U.S. assistance to the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, including land development by U.S. companies. One tool I found helpful to compare these differences in this sort of coverage is Ground News, who are also the sponsor of today's video.
Hey.
The coverage from right-wing outlets such
I love it when people that don't even read articles support Ground News. It's so funny. Is it not? Where's the curiosity? That's the weird thing. I don't understand where the curiosity is. Does he not see that headline and think, okay, does ceasefire actually mean that under no conditions can you fire a single shot? Is that what a ceasefire has always meant in military history? What are the terms of the ceasefire? What was the Israeli strike? Was there a violation on the other end that the strike was actually justified in response to? Where's the sense of curiosity? Or do you just see it and think, you said ceasefire, but there was a fire. Rip. Okay. Shill supports Ground News, just watches Al Jazeera for everything. Fuck me.
Which is Red State, frames the comments as explicitly positive. Trump and Netanyahu unveiling a bold plan for Gaza and peace. On Ground News, this outlet has a low factuality tag, which means that they often omit key details. Some liberal to left-leaning outlets like New York Magazine, an outlet with a high factuality label indicating they typically rely on well-researched reporting.
Sorry, is this what you guys just cited me, Emberman and Sulfur? For the purpose of managing the upcoming phase in accordance with a Palestinian decision, the Gaza Administration Committee will be established to manage Gaza's affairs for a transitional period of 6 months. This committee is an independent body comprised of technocrats and non-factional figures working under the umbrella of the Palestinian government. Under the umbrella of the Palestinian government. Comes within the framework of preparations for the full return of the Palestinian National Authority, the PNA. This does not completely exclude Hamas. It doesn't. A non-factional body for the administration committee to be overseeing the transitional period, that's not the same as saying that Hamas will be completely gone. This is not what that says. A lot of these institutions that Hamas still runs are Palestinian Authority institutions or PNA institutions. And also, it's a bit more telling that they don't even talk about, so why not counter it instead of saying no? I did. Did I just point that out? Because you can say Palestinian Authority in this case is not you, but them. Oh, because chat's stupid. I don't know. Same with the police as well. They talk about training Palestinian police personnel, but obviously the Palestinian Police Institution, which was a PNA institution, is still run by Hamas.
Explicitly call Trump's proposed plan a case of ethnic cleansing. Other left-leaning outlets centered the extreme nature of his language in the headlines, such as The Intercept, with an article titled "Trump, the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip," or the proposed plan's effect on Palestinians, like Middle East Eye, with their article headlined "We'll Own It. Trump wants to make Gaza a holiday hub without Palestinians." Ground News is an app and website that lets you compare media coverage across political biases while calculating each source's reliability so you can see how framing shapes public perception from sources around the world. Without understanding the different biases behind the news you read, you might not realize how skewed the narrative is. Unlike other platforms, Ground News is independent and nonpartisan, so they have no stake in promoting any agenda, just the facts and how those facts are presented. It's not always about how a story is spun, but equally important, as we've seen, is the information that other platforms choose to leave out.
Okay, here's a concession, okay? Just thinking. Let's say that the Egyptian piece, their proposal actually does completely exclude Hamas from any form of future government. Like, they're just gone. But then it also, if I'm not wrong, if I'm not misremembering, does it say that they should return to hostilities then? Why don't they propose for Hamas to leave? Because Egypt's stance is that they condemn the war. They condemn the war in Gaza. And they want to maintain the ceasefire. So they're saying, like, oh yeah, we want to rebuild Gaza. We're not going to mention Hamas. We're not going to say get rid of them. We're not going to say they're going to be part of the future government. But we're also going to say we want to keep the ceasefire. It's like, so you want to keep the ceasefire. You want to go rebuild Gaza. Hamas are still there. They still have a monopoly over the means of violence in Gaza from the Palestinian end. Is it just incoherent then? Is that because it's one or the other. One is that it doesn't answer the question of what happens with Hamas, and kind of strongly implies that their presence will at least be tolerated, or that they're going to have some involvement. Or two, it's just incoherent. It's just a complete mess.
Liberal outrage over this story has been almost entirely focused on Trump's comments, but ignores the bigger picture, the fact that it was the Biden administration who made this ethnic cleansing plan possible by facilitating the total annihilation of Gaza, and that it was the Biden administration that proposed this ethnic cleansing plan in the first place. And yet, there's only one source that leads with this crucial piece of context. Ground News made it easy to find this story and have it compared with all the rest. Ground News specifically created their blind spot feed to highlight the stories only picked up by certain politically slanted outlets so you can see the world as it is, not through the partisan narratives these outlets want you to. These are just a few of the ways that Ground News helps me research stories, stay informed, and understand the way information is being presented.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Emboman, but the problem is that if I accept your framing, then that just means that the proposal is incoherent. Because how the do you do that whilst maintaining a ceasefire? Like, how do you do that? It's impossible. What is the reason.com saying that Biden said about the proposal to remove Gazans? It's from October 12th. What did Biden actually say here? Biden, working to set up a humanitarian corridor for Palestinian civilians to flee to Egypt. This is Noah actually, this is from Reason's article. This is the article that Noah was using. Biden's failed proposal to remove Palestinians from Gaza. And they link you to this article from October 12th. Push Egypt. See that? Responsible statecraft. It's Biden saying that he wants to set up a humanitarian corridor. You're equating Trump expelling, willingly or not, 2 million people from Gaza with Biden wanting to have a humanitarian corridor for people to flee willingly. Noah, stop getting Trump elected. Please. You cannot stop treating these people like they're the same. Jesus Christ. Ground News. Oh, I hate him so much. This is why Trump won. It's not, but me, it doesn't help. Doesn't help at all. Should he not have done this? Should he have said, yeah, Egypt, leave your doors closed. Don't let people flee. What the? Too many windows open.
The world as it is, not through the partisan narratives these outlets want you to. These are just a few of the ways that Ground News helps me research stories, stay informed, and understand the way information is being presented is just as important as the information itself. I highly recommend checking it out. For a limited time, you can get the same all-access Vantage plan I use for 40% off. It's just $5 a month for a platform that actually encourages you to think for yourself. Go to ground.news/Noah or scan this QR code to sign up today. Thanks again to Ground News for supporting the channel. Now let's get back to the video. When Israelis and top Israeli officials participated in the right to rape high factuality label, indicating they typically rely on well-researched reporting, did explicitly call Trump's proposed plan a case of ethnic cleansing. Other left-leaning outlets centered the extreme nature of his language.
I just want to see how he characterized Biden's proposal.
The headlines, such as The Intercept, with an article titled "Trump, the U.S. will take," with their article headlined, "News is an app and is reliable." Banning the different other platforms, Ground News is independent and nonpartisan, so they have no stake in promoting any agenda, just the facts and how those facts are presented. It's not always about how a story is spun, but equally important, as we've seen, is the information that other platforms choose to leave out. Liberal outrage over this story has been almost entirely focused on Trump's comments, but ignores the bigger picture, the fact that it was the Biden administration who made this ethnic cleansing plan possible by facilitating.
Oh, I hate him so much. Me. Oh God, this is what happens. Like you're just just destroying the opposition to fascism. Like, oh.
The total annihilation of Gaza, and that it was the Biden administration that proposed this ethnic cleansing plan in the first place. And yet, there's only one.
No, he didn't. This is your source.
One source that leads with this crucial piece of
information. He's doing this whilst promoting a platform. He's promoting a platform that tells you how to read news responsibly. And you go to the article. This is his process. Trump revives Biden's failed proposal to remove Palestinians from Gaza. Well done, Matthew Petty. You go down. Okay, where's the Biden administration's plan? Here, tried to push Egypt to accept a mass exodus. Okay. What did Biden actually say? He's working to set up a humanitarian corridor for civilians to flee to Egypt. It was the Egyptians who dismissed it as a mass exodus, obviously because Egyptians wanted to charge extortionate fees for people to flee Gaza, which they did. I think 100,000 people from Gaza have fled into Egypt, maybe a bit over, but they had to pay a shit of money to do it. Holy, can we get a Ground News fact check on that one, please, guys? Get a Ground News fact check. This incredibly crucial piece of information. Can this guy can he not just go back to on Fresh and Fit or whatever? They're easy. You don't have to read that many articles to have a go at them.
Of context. Ground News made it easy to find this story and have it compared with all the rest. Ground News specifically created their blind spot feed to highlight the stories only picked up by certain politically slanted outlets so you can see the world as it is, not through the partisan narratives these outlets want you to. These are just a few of the ways that Ground News helps me research stories, stay informed, and understand the way information is being presented is just as important as the information itself. I highly recommend checking it out. For a limited time, you can get the same all-access Vantage plan I use for 40% off. It's just $5 a month for a platform that...
We're only halfway through the video. Oh no. And I'm also being very precarious.
That actually encourages you to think for yourself. Go to ground.news/Noah or scan this QR code to sign up today. Thanks again to Ground News for supporting the channel. Now let's get back to the video. When Israelis and top Israeli officials participated in the right to rape protests we talked about earlier, protesting the Israeli right to rape and murder Palestinian hostages, these events were summarized by the New York Times as unrest. They were framed around the protests' effect on the party that was doing the protest, that is, again, the right to rape protest, and not on the fact that Israeli guards raped a Palestinian hostage, it was captured on video, and that the case was clear-cut enough that they actually called for an investigation for once, unlike 99% of previous cases of the IDF abusing, raping, torturing, and murdering Palestinians. In this article, the guards' actions against the Palestinian hostage are described vaguely and passively as just abuse, and it is not revealed until the very end of the article that the abuse took the form of the guards raping the man with an object. The follow-up story on the prosecution prosecution of these soldiers uses this same disgusting framing. Rape with an object is whitewashed in the headline and most of the article as simply just being abuse. This is yet another case of the framing of false neutrality, as this quote-unquote divide between the Israeli right and the Israeli left in this article doesn't actually exist. In reality, all that divide means is that the Israeli right are pro-rape and murder of Palestinian detainees, and the Israeli left thinks it makes their country look bad. There's no real debate.
You heard it, guys. You heard it there, Israeli leftists in chat. The only reason you oppose rape of Palestinian detainees is because it makes Israel look bad, okay? He told you. He's speaking to you guys right now. He knows you because he watched his favorite Corey Gilshuster clips.
Debate going on here. A personal favorite of mine for its sheer absurdity was an article from the New York Times called "It Can Be Lonely to Have Middle-of-the-Road Opinions on the Middle East," which focused on college students that were seeking space for nuanced perspectives on the Israel-Hamas war. The perspective presented in this article is one-sided. They talk about extremism in student movements, but the only example they give for this point is that of the extremist Palestinian activists. The New York Times calls it a war with no reference to the numerous credible allegations of genocide. It's harder to justify having a conversation about nuanced opinions of genocide, so they just call it a war. There's no nuance in genocide. There's nothing progressive about genocide. This tendency to falsely frame a genocide with neutrality will often slip into outright endorsement. Recall Israel's pager terrorist attack in Lebanon when they detonated over 1,000 pagers rigged with explosives.
You could not get more accurate against an organization that embeds in civilian areas, in urban environments, not least of all. You could not get a more accurate strike of that size, and these guys call it terrorism. These pagers were designed to explode so that they would only hit the person holding them, not the person even like 2 feet away from them, as is shown in this video. Hezbollah admitted that most of the people who got injured by these pagers were their own operatives, their own fighters. Even the guy who was portrayed in the news as the doctor, Hezbollah claimed him as well. I think like 37, 38 people died that day, and I think 34 of them were Hezbollah. It's just like, you could not get more precise in a strike. You could not get more limiting of collateral damage in a strike against an entity that, again, is trying to destroy you. And it's just mental, man. I don't know if you guys saw this as well, but Hezbollah claimed most of the dead in the entire confrontation with Israel as well in the last war. 2006 or now? No, this war, the one that just passed. Yeah. What was the death toll for this? Like 5,000, 6,000 or something? Hezbollah claimed 4,000. They said they may have lost up to 4,000 people. The Iran-backed group, Hezbollah. But it's still terrorism, okay. Like, this was the largest non-state military in the world, and they just got absolutely annihilated to the point that they had to accept a ceasefire that still allows Israel to shoot at them. A ceasefire that allowed Israel to reserve the right, even if, just because they thought that the Lebanese army wasn't quick enough to deal with it, or UNIFIL. It led to Hezbollah accepting that guy, Aoun, Joseph Aoun, from becoming the president, and a prime minister that they didn't want either. Like, they just got done so many different ways because they were so militarily defeated, and it's still terrorism. Okay.
This was a widespread mass terrorist attack that indiscriminately targeted civilians and left hundreds dead and permanently.
Okay. Holy. Can't pause enough. Every sentence is mental. Indiscriminately target civilian. What the f does that mean? You target civilians or you're indiscriminate. Were those pagers like, yeah, the pagers killed like 30 or 40 people. Most of them were Hezbollah fighters, and they were put on the Maqawama website, like right on the day. Brought to you by Ground News. How did it prevent Aoun? I'm genuinely curious. Hezbollah would usually use their couple of dozen members of parliament or allies to walk out when they were supposed to vote in a new president. So the president in Lebanon has to be a Maronite, and they're chosen by the parliament. The parliament votes, but they need to get over a certain threshold to actually make them the president. Hezbollah were instrumental in deadlocking, because usually there's like one Maronite who's pro-Hezbollah and they'll try to get him to win, but their guy wasn't getting enough to win. So what Hezbollah would do is they would use their voting power to just walk out of the sessions to prevent anyone becoming president. But because they were so militarily defeated, and by extension politically defeated in the fighting with Israel, that they turn up to cast their votes, even though the president who got into office is anti-Hezbollah. So they no longer had the bargaining power to hold up the Lebanese process for becoming president. And then that president nominated a guy who is not a Hezbollah favorite for the prime minister, who is a Sunni. Make sense? Lebanon's complicated. Yeah, it's a very strange country.
Injured and disfigured, including a number of children.
أول شيء أنا كنت إنه قاعد عم بلعب على التليفون وهي إنه فجرت الساعة 3 إنه قبل ما أنا أحملها عم بلعب على التليفون هيك صارت ترن غريبة أنا إنه قمت حملتها.
I think so the number of injuries from these pagers was a few thousand, a couple of thousand. The two of the deaths were children, yeah. Unfortunately. One of them was, I don't know about both of them, but I know one of them was, one of them was, it was her dad was the Hezbollah operative. Because yeah, these pagers were sold to Hezbollah operatives. Like, that's what they were for. The purpose of those pagers was to activate Hezbollah fighters. They were not civilian items.
Health warning.
They were literally marketed for their sturdiness so they could go to Hezbollah fires. Like, yeah, people knew that's where they were. But I think in one case, that 8-year-old who died, it was her dad's pager who was going off because he was the Hezbollah operative. So she went into the kitchen, I think, to grab the pager when it was beeping, and then it exploded in her hand and killed her. I feel like there is space to critique a parent who gives a kid their terror network communicator. Yep. Doesn't mean the kid deserved to die, but I think that's kind of obvious.
حطيت لي قرار وسهم إنه عشان أكبس أوكي والضوء صار يغبش على الآخر يعني عشان نقربها على عيوننا أنا قربت عشان نشوف شو فيه بس فقعت ما عرفت شي.
Among those murdered was Fatima Abdullah, a 9-year-old.
This is the one. Oh, she was 9. Okay. I thought she was 8. This is the one who, her dad was a Hezbollah operative. It was his pager. Is that boy the one other child? No, I believe 2 kids died. One got, and that one was the injured one. That's the ones that I know about. That's entirely on the parents. No, it's not. Like, at the end of the day, like, you have to own that position if you're going to. Like, the Mossad, or whoever was behind the actual strike, Netanyahu approved it, didn't he? They made a decision, like, if you're going to do a strike on a group like Hezbollah, you accept that some people you kill are going to be civilians, and by extension, some of them are going to be children. Like, yeah, they accepted that. They accepted that that was their collateral, and they did it. Like, it was their decision to do it, yeah. They just decided that it was worth the military advantage, because what it did was that it completely incapacitated, like, over 1,500 Hezbollah fighters, and they admitted that, put them out of action forever, basically. And it also destroyed their communication, which meant they were completely disorientated, which made it easier for Israel to attack them, because communication is pretty important for Hezbollah, since so much of what they do involves moving rocket launch sites around the either the towns or in the countryside, like, very quickly so that they don't get caught. Yeah, war ain't pretty. Yeah. But as far as civilian to combatant, like, this particular attack, it's like... It's as accurate as you can get. Like, no airstrike is going to get you closer to this for civilian casualties, right? Nor is any ground invasion. The problem is that the quiet part, which Noah is very maliciously avoiding, because he's just making it look like he cares about the kids or whatever. The fact is that there is no strike against Hezbollah that would be acceptable to these people, because they want Hezbollah to win. Like, if you take everything Noah just says about Israel, okay, and Israeli society, then they have a valid, then they shouldn't be able to defend themselves. They should just allow Hezbollah to fire at them with as much as they have. They should just allow all 200,000 rockets to come their way, and all the long-range missiles and all the drones, just let them come in, you up. Like, that's the problem. But he won't own that position because that's not good propaganda. That's actually like that's buying a difficult bullet. But, like, and no one's like, Is anyone denying that? Like, is it not really, really obvious? Like, he wants Hezbollah to win. It's the only logical conclusion of what he's saying. Do we know the rank or position of the people that Hezbollah hit? The fear would be hitting people in the political wing or reservists and ex-militants. There's a gray area there. It's nothing beyond. So tell me about reservists. If you're a reservist, do you have a pager on you? Do you have like a headset, or like do you have like a piece of military equipment that's ready to? Because I thought reservists when they get called up. I don't know. When a reservist gets called up, what does that mean? Does that mean they get activated like on the day? I don't think it does, right? If you're carrying a pager, it's very unlikely you're a reservist, right? Because the point of that pager was to activate them. If you get called up as a reservist, though, so they call you, but then what happens after that when they call you up? Do you go in for like, is there any kind of like re-induction, or is there any like what? Do you have to go in and get armed and all that? Because like the point of a reservist is that there's a very clear delineation between you've finished your reservist duty and then you've gone off to integrate into civilian life. But I think with Hezbollah, the way that they operate, even across their political and military wing, is like you shapeshift like almost every day, or like you can just like within the space of a few minutes. Like it's like people get activated like very instantaneously, because I know this happened when. I can't remember what's their government structure. You got like the Shura Council, and they oversee the military wing and the political wing and the welfare administration. But there was this whole. I need to remember what the actual structure is, but I think it's the Shura Council on top, and then everything else is just like delineated straight from them. It's not like you've got these completely like separate ministries. So it was the case when the European Union or European countries, they tried to do this thing where you prescribe Hezbollah as a terrorist organization, but they tried to delineate. So America just calls all of Hezbollah a terror organization, but Hezbollah in the European countries, they designated Hezbollah's military wing as a terrorist organization, but not the political wing. And then I think a Hezbollah official actually laughed at them for it because of how they argued there's no distinction. Where can I find that actually? It was in that book. It was actually a book by someone who's fairly sympathetic to them. Who was the official who said that? I know the Washington Institute made that argument. It was 2013 when it happened. No, this is just an opinion piece from it. I don't remember when I find the quote. There is a quote though. Oh, it was Naim Qassem. That was who it was. The guy who's the current Secretary General. 2011, he said this. Can someone give me the context of the quote? Again, I don't know how much of this is just rhetoric. But yeah, this was in response to the EU trying to separate the military wing from the political one, because the way that their government structure works, it's not like there are separate wings. That's not entirely how it works. But I don't think that instantaneously makes everyone a militant. But yeah, Hezbollah spokesman and deputy secretary, he is now currently the Secretary General, repeatedly denied the existence of any separation between the two, asserting we don't have a military wing and a political one. We don't have Hezbollah on the one hand and the resistance party on the other. Yeah, this is like, Hezbollah denies the idea that there's like a distinct civilian element to them that's completely separate from the resistance. But I don't know, that could just be rhetoric.
Year-old girl. At her funeral, as well as other funerals with large crowds of people, Israel detonated more of these explosives.
That distinction exists for Hamas, yes. The Hamas government, they have like a Ministry of Interior, they've got like a Ministry of Islamic Values or whatever, then they've got the Al-Qassam Brigades wing. Hamas are much more distinct, so they do have like... Hamas does have civilian members. I don't know if the IDF actually acknowledges that, though. or they acknowledge it, but I don't know if they treat it that way. But yeah, Hamas, their structure is a lot more distinct because they behave a lot more like a normal... Ironically, they behave more like a normal government. Yeah.
Despite this being a child-killing and maiming indiscriminate terrorist attack in violation of international law...
When people cite international laws they have no understanding of, oh god, they're a whole ass government. Yeah, can't argue with that. Where is it? I can't ever remember where I keep the video here. It is prohibited to use booby traps or other devices in the form of apparently harmless portable objects which are specifically designed and constructed to contain explosive material. A booby trap is a device that you trigger, like, that isn't detonated from outside. A booby trap is like you open a door and it explodes. Those pages were not booby traps. And actually, even this convention on, what's it called? Oh, God. The 1980 convention. It's the Convention on Non-Conventional Weapons or something stupid. Or is it the Convention on Conventional Weapons? The one oh, it's Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. There we go. Where's the full text of it? Give it to me. Booby trap means any device or material which is designed, constructed, or adapted to kill or injure, which functions unexpectedly when a person disturbs or approaches an apparently harmless object and performs an apparently safe act. So it was not functioning unexpectedly when a person disturbs it. It was the explosions were triggered from the Israeli side, which is not booby trapping. But they also, even here, where is it where they have the exemptions? Is it this one or is it an elaborative one? It's prohibited. I looked through this so much when you debated West Side Tyler. Yeah, it's in the Convention for Conventional Weapons. Yeah. It's one where they talk about all the different military areas. I think one of them was even headsets. Where was it? This was before I was Obsidian noting absolutely everything. Or maybe I did. No, I did do this one, didn't I? Pager. Hezbollah, Israel? Was that it? Did I make a separate one? It's not about it being against civilians. It's this. Additional Protocol 2. Actually, Protocol 2, the same thing that Noah's using. Without prejudice to the provisions of Article 3, it is prohibited to use weapons to which this article applies in any city, town, village, or other area containing a similar concentration of civilians in which combat between ground forces is not taking place or does not appear to be imminent unless either they are placed on or in the close vicinity of a military objective, which is a Hezbollah operative. That's a military objective. Measures taken to protect civilians from their effects. For example, the posting of warning sentries, the issue of warnings, or the prison offenses. So the threshold here, it even says or. Apparently you don't even need to do this. Okay. This would be making sure that they only hit the person who's holding them. So I feel like they crossed both of those about as well as they could. I don't know. Yeah, don't do this. Don't just grab some random thing and act as if like that proves your case. These laws are complicated.
A child-killing and maiming indiscriminate terrorist attack in violation of international law, in Western liberal media it was presented as a cool James Bond-style operation. It was described using words like ambitious, sophisticated, and daring.
The Israeli spy agency Mossad launched one of the most daring and sophisticated deceptions in the history of counterintelligence.
An extraordinary act of espionage. Yep. An example of Israel's technological prowess.
I mean, it definitely was all those things. It was. Like, I'm sorry. And it's tragic that civilians died. But this is still also all true. Especially considering that there's, like, it's as discriminate as you can get against Hezbollah. Because of how they fight. Hezbollah does not want to meet Israel out in the field in tanks, right? They don't want to do that. They want to fight this way.
According to the New York Times, the attack restored the aura of Israel's intelligence agencies. Whoa. Before covering the attack, these outlets always, of course, make sure to mention Hezbollah's U.S. designation as a terrorist organization. Don't worry, guys. They were just terrorists. Nothing to see here. We got the bad guys. They were bad. We are good. Mission accomplished. And of course...
I mean, I thought they were terrorists. But when you say it like that, I'm actually kind of reconsidering my entire position because you said that in a really goofy, mocking voice, and now I'm like, I don't know what to think anymore.
As we've touched on a couple times, lying by omission, that's another thing. With every previous example, you see it. The Israeli hostages receive wall-to-wall coverage with no mention of the fact that the majority of the deaths of these hostages were a product of the Israeli military through airstrikes or firing on hostages while they were waving white flags, or that on October 7th, Israel issued the Hannibal Directive, killing likely many hundreds of its own civilians.
Source! Hannibal Directive has never been about civilians. It's always been about soldiers. And it's not someone's been kidnapped, kill them. It's It's that you have permission to engage in an operation to save them by any means, even if it risks killing them. That's the Hannibal Directive. It's about a risk. And it's controversial. I guess the whole debate is whether or not you want to switch a soldier for 1,000 Hamas guys who have committed murder in the past and would commit it again if they were released because they wouldn't get held in a Palestinian jail. It's never been about killing civilians, not least of all hundreds. Source, you liar. Source, why? Why would you do that? Did Ground News tell you that? They didn't. The IDF probe found that they found one person who was killed by helicopter fire, once Israeli hostage, because they were in a vehicle with Hamas guys being taken back to Gaza. And then there was the 13 people who were killed in the kibbutz by the tank, which was not Hannibal Directive. I don't think there's any evidence that that tank fire was because of Hannibal Directive. Could have been a mistake. Could have been recklessness. Could have been a very soldier. Maybe he's going to tell us.
As a matter of official policy. One of the really...
Hundreds. Hundreds!
Effective propaganda strategies that results from these lies by omissions comes in the case of genocide allegations. Western outlets rarely, if ever, actually mention the numerous allegations of genocide levied against Israel. The few times that they do, they're often brief, unspecific, and accompanied with equivocation or lengthy citations of Israel's defense against the allegations. When the New York Times covered the Amnesty International genocide report, the subheading immediately backtracks into running cover for Israel. Israel rejected the charge, the first of its kind by a major human rights organization, saying it was based on lies.
He really has it out for the New York Times, eh? Gosh.
The Times went on to spend more of the article sharing the IDF's defense against the allegations than any of the findings from the actual report. Amnesty International gave us
Why don't you talk about the findings of the report then, Noah? Why don't you tell us why why you find them strong?
300 pages of facts about genocide. Israel says that they're just lies. I guess we'll never know what happened here. That's not journalism, that's propaganda. When Human Rights Watch released their report accusing Israel of committing crimes against humanity and genocide through its deliberate deprivation of access to clean drinking water, readers of the New York Times wouldn't have heard about that because the New York Times just didn't report it. That's one of the top human rights organizations in the world, accusing the #1 ally of the most powerful country in the world of the crime of all crimes. And they just forgot? No, they didn't forget. The editorial staff at the New York Times knows that they've helped this. They know that they are complicit in this. So any chance they get to just sort of forget to mention something as consequential as a genocide allegation from the leading human rights group in the world, they'll do it. Of course they will. This tracks with the BBC's repeated genocide denial, evident in repeated incidents.
It's you know, again, the fact that both sides are so mind on this conflict is like how do both sides think the BBC is like wanting to genocide them? How does that happen? The last time I heard people talk about the BBC was those Israelis were off because there was like a documentary. What even happened there? There was a documentary, and I think they it turned out one of the guys in it was or behind it was a Hamas guy, and the BBC didn't mention that. So they allowed a Hamas guy basically to propagandize in a documentary without telling you that he was a Hamas guy. And now they people are also saying that the BBC doesn't call Hamas terrorists, even though they call everyone else terrorists, like Taliban and so what's the other side of it now?
Instances of reporters condemning or correcting guests for using the word genocide to describe Israel's actions in Gaza.
Israel would deny that a genocide is taking place, saying that it is defending its right to exist. Its very existence, indeed, they would say, is under threat. So there are obviously two sides to this.
This whole issue of right of self-defense has allowed Israel to inflict the mass murder and mass destruction, what the ICJ now describe as plausible genocide. This is not an act of
you know what I'm going to have to say. I'm going to say Israel denies that. They say that they were in pursuit of Hamas terrorists who hid behind their own people.
This is a genocide happening in front of our eyes.
This is bad. This is propagandistic journalism to you? Okay.
That word, as you know, incredibly emotive, and the Israelis, as you know, will be saying that they are targeting Hamas only, that they don't target civilians.
Well, that's simply not the truth, unfortunately.
Planned, military incursions.
Yes, but this is not the truth,
yes, civilians are dying.
Civilians are dying, and the way that the bombs are getting dropped, I don't believe are in a targeted way. Nothing from what I'm hearing on the ground suggests that the bombs have been dropped in a targeted way. Our social media manager, all 5 houses around him got blown up. They estimate 100 people were killed in them. Yesterday, his house was the last one remaining in the neighborhood. They leveled an entire neighborhood.
Thank you very much. And I do need to make that qualification, of course, that that it is always denied by the Israelis that genocide is taking place. They say these are
You can tell that the only thing you could have a go at these journalists for is that they're just like, they seem very disinterested. She's not even going to send him the pushback that's like, okay, what? I've never seen mainstream media do this at all, actually, at least from the liberal side, is to say, you're aware that Hamas, like, literally tells people in Gaza that they're forbidden to talk about soldiers who died, that you have to call everyone who died a civilian. That never comes up. That's just a talking point that they never use. Why don't you give the pro-Palestinian side a sloppy on live television? It's propaganda. Okay. Where is... Okay, have I got everything I need here? All right.
Glad I could help. Strategic planned strikes in Gaza, and that they are targeting the militant group Hamas.
Like, all she's doing, this is the pushback ever. This is her saying, oh yeah, Israel said that's not true. Really? You think that's propaganda?
But I'm here to let the world know that that's not the case.
Kareem, you've been able to have your say. This is
you,
what the Israelis will always say in response to that.
This effort to whitewash and run cover for the genocide.
God, you're so sensitive, man. Like, this is what I, like... I just... How can you be that... After promoting ground news of all things, like, literally a journalist saying, oh yeah, the other side will dispute that. That's the BBC doing propaganda coverage. Like, what the... Like, what would good coverage be to you? Like Al Jazeera? That's probably, yeah, he wants Qatari state media. Because they have it right. You know, the state media of a country that's built by slaves. Like, yeah, somehow they've got it right.
It has been intentional, of course, and we have the proof. It's been confirmed.
Oh yeah, and also that shelters Hamas. Sorry, forgot about that important detail. The state media of the people who are built by slaves and shelters Hamas, somehow they're the ones who are on the money on this. Just a very strange coincidence. Whoa! I did not know I had all... Whoa! No, I don't use any of these, though. It's only instant that I use. Thank you.
See you around. With direct evidence and testimony, with internal newsroom memos from not only the...
Oh, Qatar kicked them out. Well, rip.
You got my attention.
That wasn't that long ago, was it? It's ringing a bell.
BBC, but the New York Times as well. And the last thing to talk about is just atrocity propaganda. One of the primary justifications for the genocide in Gaza is that members of Hamas are not just militants, but that they are monsters, pure evil motivated by nothing more than the sadistic hatred of Jews. Okay. This narrative has been fueled by stories of horrors that supposedly took place on October 7th. Hamas burned babies in ovens.
They burnt babies alive?
They put children and burned them to death.
They cut the breasts off of women.
I don't know about babies, but there were children who were in houses that got set on fire. That happened, didn't it? There was the mother that was in an embrace with her child, and they both had like soot in their lungs, which indicates that they were still alive when they were on fire. Okay.
400 women shot in the genitals, their breasts cut off as terrorists played.
Don't listen to anything Rabbi Shmuley says. He's completely insane. Okay.
With their bloody breasts like a football. They cut off the breasts of women and throw them around.
They beheaded 40 babies.
I never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children.
They behead children.
They cut the fetus out of the womb of a pregnant woman. They committed a campaign of systematized mass rape.
There is no justification for collective rape.
What happened on October 7th was mass.
Why is he reframing everything like collective rape? That did happen. The UN report said that happened. They didn't say it was mass ordered systematized. He's doing the Hasan thing. He's like reframing what they're saying to make it sound like ridiculous. Okay. Great. Whoa. Is this the right place? Yeah, okay.
Mass, systematic, planned rape, and genital mutilation of women.
So she said it. Okay. So Dershowitz didn't say it, but she did. Okay. Review testimonies obtained by journalists and the Israeli police concerning rape, but has not been able to independently verify such allegations due to a lack of access to victims, witnesses, and crime sites, and obstruction. Unable to review the unedited version of such testimonies. Okay. Hang on. I think this is from the exact same report. There's no way that he's got this from the same report. I wonder if, let's double check this is the same. Yeah. What's the context of this? Review testimonies obtained by journalists. He's talking about testimonies obtained by journalists and Israeli police. Okay. Are we going to go to the results of their own fact-finding mission? What the commission actually found themselves, which was the attack enabled perpetrators to commit sexual violence. And it was not isolated, but perpetrated in similar ways in several locations by multiple perpetrators. We're not going to get that bit? That bit's important, no? That bit's very important. This makes it almost sound like, if you just look at these highlighted bits, that makes it sound like they couldn't verify that nothing happened. Okay.
All of these claims are false, complete fabrications, full stop, no credible evidence.
Oh, so he's a rape denier. Nice one. No credible evidence. Whilst posting a segment from a report that has credible evidence, that describes it as credible evidence. Out of interest, is it the same one where you can just, it doesn't let you look at the actual, I have to download it. RIP. Give me find on page. All right, PDF. Okay, credible. This isn't the same commission. Where's the, this is the one saying that they didn't receive orders. Okay. UN investigation, right, October 7th. This isn't the squirrel screenshot, is it? The squirrel screenshot was actually completely fabricated. This is the one, I think. But they don't have the full report. Why wouldn't they give you the PDF on the UN's own website? This is just a press release. The mission report. I remember the original link for this got deleted. Full PDF, please. It's not this one. It's this one. Yeah. Wow. Can't type. Credible sources described finding murdered individuals, mostly women whose bodies were naked from the waist down, some totally naked. Indication of sexual violence. Credible information based on witness accounts describe an incident of the rape of 2 women by armed elements. This is referring to the other report, to this one, I think. There was sufficient credible and reliable information to make a finding in fact. Okay. As to an incident pattern or trend of conflict-related sexual violence. Credible statements by eyewitnesses, as well as other available information, that there are reasonable grounds to believe that multiple incidents of rape, including gang rape, occurred in and around the Nova Festival site. Credible information was obtained regarding multiple incidents whereby victims were subjected to rape and then killed. Further accounts of individuals who witnessed at least 2 incidents of rape of corpses. Other credible sources described seeing multiple murdered individuals, mostly women whose bodies were found naked from the waist down. Credible information based on corroborating witness accounts describes an incident involving the rape of 2 women. Credible information about bodies found naked and or tied, in one case gagged. Credible circumstantial information which may be indicative of some forms of sexual violence. Okay. I love it that people who accuse other people of atrocity denial just do it in the most blatant way possible. How? Why the projection?
Of women.
All of these claims are false, complete fabrications, full stop. No credible evidence has been provided for any of them. Many were shown to be deliberately fabricated, and despite this, they were spread far and wide and ultimately used as rhetorical justification. And despite this,
he's actually gone through the report as well, which is so gross. Look at this. He's gone through the report that we just looked at, which shows credible witness information about people who were raped, and the conclusion that this happened like in multiple different locations simultaneously in a short space of time in a small area. And he's just found the parts where the more extreme claims, not a discernible pattern of genital mutilation. Is that the only form of sexual violence? He's literally gone through this. Did he just control F, no discernible, or like what the? He's literally just gone through this report and looked for all the things that didn't have substantiation and ignore the ones that do. Do you know the kind of people who do that, right? Like this is what, ironically, this is actually a similar tactic to what Holocaust deniers do, is they will find more extreme claims that often came from witnesses at the time that were harder to substantiate, and they would just cling on to that to try and discredit the entire narrative. This is also actually how right-wingers in Israel, if you want to make a comparison, is how they deny Deir Yassin, is they'll focus on the more controversial elements because so many exaggerations were made at the time by Arab media that they'll just focus on that to discredit the entire story. Even though Deir Yassin was a massacre, what happened was clearly a massacre. There were war crimes committed all over the place, but people will still use the controversial parts like the mass rapes, which didn't happen, or the oven story or something like that, and they'll just focus on those ones to try and discredit everything. And the only way you can actually do that is if you know the whole story. It's really hard to find all those tidbits without knowing that you've skipped over the credible information as well.
Were spread far and wide and ultimately used as rhetorical justification to continue the genocidal onslaught in Gaza. The first major place this narrative broke was Screams Without Words, a front-page New York Times story in late December.
Oh yeah, there was one story in this paper, maybe two, one for sure, that they've since put an editor's note on because it wasn't verifiable. The guy who said that he saw two girls with semen on their back, because the girls that he was talking about were identified somewhere else and not in that way. Everything else that people try to discredit in this article is complete.
Of 2023, this story came as Israel's actions in Gaza were starting to receive widespread condemnation from the international community. The story was thoroughly debunked. The person who wrote it discredited as being a genocide.
This is the Zay Squirrel, isn't it? She liked this fairly long tweet, I think on October 8th or 9th. Even though it's interesting because witnesses and family members of victims of October 7th spoke about this person and said that she was like literally trying really, really, really hard to verify like everything. She can have these mad opinions if she wants, or she can have like a massive skew and could definitely have lost her during October 7th and liked to tweet like this. But am I going to discredit Noah because he supports Ban and Panada? Well, no, I discredit Noah because his arguments are right, because he speaks a lot, because he lies, right? Because he's a propagandist. Because the things that he says are verifiably stupid. You can't just begin and end your arguments with like, oh, this person like believes this other thing, even if it's something as crazy as this. I want to go back one frame.
The story was...
The mission team was unable to establish the prevalence of sexual violence and concludes that he's illiterate. He's completely illiterate. Was unable to establish the prevalence because this was a 2-week fact-finding mission. It even says this doesn't mean anything. This mission team was unable to establish the prevalence, like to say the scale at which it happened, not to say that it didn't happen at all. I can't do it. Oh God. I'm really sorry to whoever has to edit this video. I feel like I want to go through all of it now. I guess we already have. Too many tabs. Too many tabs. Let's close a bunch of these windows and just, okay. This is the mission report, this is the 23-page document. Okay. I just want to see what's near it. I want to see what's near this paragraph because this paragraph isn't telling you anything. Okay. So it's from conclusions. Okay. Overall, based on the totality of information gathered from multiple and independent sources at different locations, there are reasonable grounds to believe that conflict-related sexual violence occurred at several locations across the Gaza periphery, including in the form of rape and gang rape during October 7th, 2023 attacks. Credible circumstantial information which may be indicative of some forms of sexual violence, including genital mutilation, sexualized torture, or cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, was also gathered. With regards to the hostages, the mission team found clear and convincing information, this is like a higher standard than reasonable grounds to believe, that some hostages taken to Gaza have been subjected to various forms of conflict-related sexual violence and has reasonable grounds to believe that such violence may be ongoing. He skips both of those and takes this one because I guess he just didn't read it or read it in a hurry and said the team was unable to establish the prevalence, not the presence, not the existence, the prevalence. Noah.
Was thoroughly debunked. The person who wrote it discredited as...
See that? Did they talk about the prevalence in that New York Times article? Because in that New York Times article, they speak about different instances. They literally talk about witness testimony the same way that the UN report does. They take witness testimony of that guy Raz Cohen. They talk about one of the ladies who was found on the road. They use individual stories. It doesn't debunk anything.
Being a genocidal Zionist with no history of reporting and self-admitting that the New York Times pushed for this story to come to the public despite the lack of credible evidence. The New York Times podcast, The Daily,
wasn't a lack of credible evidence. It's not what the UN said either.
shelved the episode due to a lack of credible evidence, but the New York Times never
That's just a headline from Ryan Grimm. Okay.
retracted the story, which is because they had no real pressure to do so. The false narrative had already prevailed, and that narrative was consistent with the status quo of the American empire, for whom they are running cover. In July of last year, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu repeated some of these lies in front of Congress. He received a standing ovation. 3 weeks later, the White House approved a $20 billion military aid package to Israel. They explicitly cited Netanyahu's visit as one of their motivations for doing so.
I can't fucking believe he thought this was debunking anything. Oh my God. I know that was actually the prevalence. They even elaborate on what they mean by it. Overall magnitude, scope would require a more fully fledged investigation. Well, since he recommended the Bana Banana videos, I guess Noah thinks that no rapes happened, or maybe only one or two? Okay.
Atrocity propaganda has consequences. So with that context...
Yeah, I can tell. That's the context. He literally just denied a bunch of... Oh, God. Okay.
Out of the way about the Gaza genocide and its support from the West and within Israel, the broader media system that allowed it to happen, let's now return to Ethan's video. In the content nuke, you can find just about every type of what we just looked at in terms of manufacturing consent. Ethan spreads atrocity propaganda. He shares the Hamas mass rape hoax, the same hoax that was used by the Western media, the US government, and the Israeli government to justify a genocide. He cites the same sources that these parties cite when they go on stage to legitimize more military killing machinery shipments to Israel.
And October 7, last year, Hamas committed...
Does this idiot really think that they needed rapes to justify going to war with Hamas? Like, no, you dumb fuck. Like, it's the fact that Hamas penetrated into the borders of a sovereign country and killed over 1,000 people. Sorry, maybe they killed, like, what, 500? 400 of whom were soldiers, if you take into account the Hannibal kill a bunch of civilians doctrine, which definitely happened, apparently. According to who exactly?
Horrific acts of sexual violence. Cheryl, I thank you for all your work.
Again, so apparently horrific acts of sexual violence. So he's denying all of them. He thinks all of them are fake. Or maybe he'll concede one or two. If he's clever. Like, which is still... I can't believe he's read so he has read the report. Like, he didn't just get a bunch of screenshots from Zaysquirrel, did he? And not read the report, because he's literally like one paragraph away from something that completely contradicts what he's saying. Is he intentional? Am I actually just watching a scheming cunt right now?
To bring to light the horrors of this issue and for your film about what happened on October 7.
In his video, Ethan spreads overt misinformation, just straight up lies about Hezbollah and Ansar Allah, or the Houthis, in order to delegitimize their struggle against Israel's genocide. He cites baseless claims from Saudi state propaganda outlets to attack.
Oh, is this where we also argue that Ethiopian victims, the Ethiopian refugees who have spoken to human rights organizations, including Human Rights Watch, are they Saudi propagandists as well?
Attack the Houthis. He also cites a documentary about Ansar Allah, which he uses as proof of the claim that they brought back slavery, when the documentary wasn't even about the Houthis. It was about the Yemeni government before the Houthi take.
Yeah, that was a bit of an L from Ethan. That was a big L. The fact is that the Yemeni government and the Houthis both engage in a form of, like, it would be more trafficking than slavery, or forced labor, but not, I mean, these guys call the American prison system slavery. So yeah, actually it is slavery. Yeah, they both do slavery. Yeah, by their standards, it absolutely is slavery. Also, are child soldiers not slavery? Would that not be a form of slavery to a leftist? Like, because the Houthis do that openly. They'll take pictures of it and brag about it.
Takeover. He spreads long debunked Nakba denialist talking points.
Can you please send me please play the example? He does not do Nakba denial. He doesn't. He doesn't.
Points that have been used for decades to legitimize Israeli colonization of Palestine. Ethan cites sources that contradict his own claims directly, such as the UN report he claims.
Overall, based on the totality of information gathered from multiple and independent sources, different locations, there are reasonable grounds to believe. Okay. Why is that false? Let's see.
Proves the Hamas mass rapes allegation.
There's a UN report that concludes it happened,
which the report itself denies.
It doesn't establish the prevalence. Oh God, it's just that they're just playing so fast and loose with the existence of the word mass, right? Like, do they think these guys literally want to see like 1,000 raped Jews just for it to be mass rape, right? Is that it? Is that what we're going with now? Hasan jump scare. True. Where's the one with the 95.95? I keep fucking losing it. This is not it. It's the other one. Israel. Why are there are two of these UN reports, one of them that goes up to past 95, because that's the one that says it was a pattern. Well, we saw it earlier. I don't know why I have to bring it up again. Is it this one? Did I just click that one twice? Okay. Is it this one? No, this is the 23-page one. There's a longer one. Where's the longer one? That's the New York Times one. Okay. It's in my history, so this one. It's not even that one. Holy. Where's the other one? What the following the visit? I don't know. I've lost it. Why have I completely lost it? What the whatever. I'm skipping.
He spends 20 minutes in the video smearing a 19-year-old survivor of the US-backed Saudi genocide in Yemen as a terrorist with zero.
Is Noah going to tell us how the Yemeni civil war started?
No credible evidence. He makes a number of transparently false.
So we don't take the fact that he called himself a soldier. Is he not going to review the evidence? Why is he just glossing over everything? Like, engage with the arguments. What the? There was quite a list of reasons to believe that this kid was involved with the Houthis militarily. Not least of all that he said he was. Like, okay.
Anti-Semitism accusations, like his claim that Israel's ban on new account signups from Israel was anti-Semitic.
Around the end of the year, when people started talking about anti-Semitism on Twitch, Dan Saltman discovered the Israel ban when he was sent the code proving the block happened.
In reality, the ban also affected millions of non-Jews living in Israel and Palestinians.
Hezbollah is not anti-Semitic when they fire rockets at Israelis because some of them hit Arabs. Based. So based. Hamas isn't anti-Semitic because on October 7th, they killed a couple of Bedouins. Actually. Also, West Bank does not get all their internet from Israel. Like, this didn't just... Okay. Obviously, this was targeted at Israel. Yeah, there's nothing... It is quite possible to hate Jews so much that you will take a few Arabs down on the way. Yeah, that's not mutually exclusive.
In Palestine, as shown in the evidence he himself cites. The IP ban went into effect in both. Like all these Western liberal outlets, Ethan just takes the State Department line of thinking when it comes to terrorism, which his video is ostensibly a crusade against. By his own definition of terrorism, both the US and Israel are the largest terrorist organizations in the world. Wow. Given their history of killing millions of innocent civilians across the globe, his focus is not on them.
Millions. Okay.
Though rather the groups that they consider to be terrorists, aka, the bad guys. He actually uses those exact words. He says they're the bad guys.
They are a designated terrorist group by the US, by the EU. These guys are clearly the bad guys.
The entire video is kind of a lie by omission, simply because of everything we just went over. How none of it is a factor, how none of the people viewing the video that are unfamiliar with what's happening would ever come away with his video knowing the full picture, knowing some of the very valid reasons why someone like Hasan might be critical of Israeli atrocity propaganda, or might support groups like the Houthis for their heroic actions in the Red Sea against a genocidal...
You are such a despicable cunt. Heroically kidnapping sailors who didn't do and hold them hostage for over a year. Heroically. You, man. Jesus Christ. How did the Yemeni civil war start, Noah? If you're ever watching this, you're gonna have to Google it in a panic and check, because you don't know. Like, you can criticize the Saudis till the end of the earth, and I do them for what they did in Yemen. It's not like the Saudis are the baddies and the Houthis are the goodies. That's not how that works, okay? Welcome to the Middle East, buddy. Like, it's not that simple. Why did the Houthis take over Sana'a? How did they do it? Who did they side with when they do it? Why did they side with a deposed president who got kicked out in the Arab Spring? Why did they recruit child soldiers? Are you going to deny that? They did it musically. Why did the UN stop sending aid to Yemen? Yeah, why did the UN threaten to stop sending aid to Yemen? Why? Was it because they don't like Yemenis? Or is it because, oh no, it's because the Houthis were stealing so much aid that the UN had no guaranteed way. They had no way of ensuring that the aid would go to the people who needed it. So they thought there was no point. That's how much aid the Houthis stole. And they kidnapped UN aid workers as well. Accused some of them of being Mossad operatives. Heroic actions. Why did the Houthis have such a beef with Israel? It's like 1,000 miles away. Israel's only ever attacked Yemen after the Houthis have attacked them. And then they'll say, oh, it's because they can't help but see their Arab brothers suffering. Meanwhile, the Houthis support Assad in Syria. They supported Assad as he was using chemical weapons on his own people. Like these guys, the axis of resistance, like these guys are the biggest Arab killers in the region. They kill so many Arabs. Far more than Israel does. The Houthis also ethnically cleansed the last Yemeni Jews. Yeah, they also persecuted the shit out of the Christians as well, and the Baha'is. Yep, but no, they were heroic in the Red Sea, you know, kidnapping sailors from Asia. Kidnapping Southeast Asian sailors. Is it Filipino or Indonesian? Forgot. Gosh.
Regime. The biggest issue, I think, is that Ethan manages to do all of this while still calling himself a stalwart ally to the Palestinians.
I've been a stalwart.
Well, at the very least, he's like advocating for things that don't inevitably end up getting them all killed. Whereas Noah and I guess like Bana Banada and all those people support what exactly? Like just October 7th. Like that's a good idea. Hezbollah, the Houthis. Because they've done so much for Palestinians, haven't they?
Supporter of the Palestinian cause for many years.
This is what makes liberal Zionism so insidious. He is using humanistic appeals to things like peace and safety, but doing so in a way that distracts from the actual source of the problem. The problem is Zionism and the genocidal Israeli state. That is what's causing these problems. And people that might otherwise be able to understand if presented with the facts of the situation are simply led astray by people like Ethan, where a more right-wing Zionist might put off the average liberal with extremist claims and overtly genocidal language. A liberal Zionist draws you in with the facade of...
God, why do all these people think they're Malcolm X? It's so cringe. Whilst the right-winger is more overt in their hatred, the liberal is a Stop, you are not Malcolm X. And you don't want to be Malcolm X, because Malcolm X was actually quite all right? He didn't really do that much. He was also massively anti-Semitic. He used to tell his followers to read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion because it was essential reading. He believed it. He thought it was an authentic document. That's a true story.
Empathy. He wants to appear empathetic, as if he cares for these people, as if he doesn't ascribe to a genocidal ideology. So, in order to do that, he has to lie, and roping in otherwise progressive people into a death cult. Aside from this video being a nonsensical genocidal propaganda piece, it's also entirely unoriginal. The video is a culmination of a months-long campaign against Hasan and all these other creators and Twitch, the company, to smear them as terrorists and anti-Semites and get people, in trouble. The campaign began as a response to the suspension of the live streamer Asmongold. Asmongold made some comments that explicitly justified Israel's genocide of Palestinians in Gaza.
I'm not going to cry a river when people who have genocide that's baked into their laws are getting genocided.
Asmongold. What a prick. The largest political streamer on Twitch, guys. The boy. Yup. I really wish he would just say, yup, yup, ooh. I wish he would just say that. That he broke the wheel. He shouldn't have done this. Don't give your opinion. Don't give your opinion on politics, Asmongold. Just stick to the wheel. Do not break the wheel. You cannot break the wheel. We trust the wheel. The spinning wheel of Asmongold reactions, okay? Because when he breaks the wheel, this happens. Why is the space so Why is it so bad? Literally, I finally, Noah Samsen stops talking for a second, and then this guy comes in the room.
They come from an inferior culture. I don't feel bad for them. I don't feel sorry for them. I don't care. I don't support them.
Following his suspension for these comments, a community of large content creators, most notably the...
Oh, this is There's quite a few essays you can get on this. It's not even disputed. No one would tell you this is disinformation unless they're coping. The nation's view of the Jewish state was also profoundly influenced by the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which Malcolm X had originally introduced to members years before, projecting their own determination to rule the world onto the Jews. NOI leaders found the protocols entirely credible. Yeah, Malcolm X used to give the protocols to people, to new recruits as essential reading. Yeah.
The live streamer Destiny, along with his fan base, rushed to Asmongold's defense, whitewashing and justifying his comments.
Meanwhile, Asmongold gets a 15-day ban for having a spicy take.
Oh, is this this is when they don't really defend the comments, but they just say he shouldn't have got banned because compared to the shit that Hasan says, it's the double standard. Okay, gotcha. Oh, I'm bored. I'm getting bored. Where are we? What's this? Oh, 4 of them.
In the usually apolitical commentary sphere made videos that signal boosted these allegations to millions of viewers. Most of these videos used the same clips, many of them directly citing this smear campaign's website.
That was a website known as Dan Klein.
Tuton absolutely just watched this video and then regurgitated it to me. He's using all of the same talking points. The end of this video is all just Destiny shit. Oh, it goes back to Hasan and Ethan. I don't want to react to Destiny right now. Fuck that guy. All right.
Anti-Semitism and Zionist politicians like Richie Torres, who shared and boosted the campaign. He consistently weaponizes Zionist talking points, like asserting that any reference to Zionism is actually just coded anti-Semitic language, the implication there being, of course, that criticizing Israel and Zionism is inherently anti-Semitic. That's a very common Zionist tactic. It's like the Zionist tactic, in the West at least.
Yep, and it's right, Noah? You don't hate all Jews, just most of them. And all it takes is most of them. Isn't Destiny Hasan's former BFF? Yeah. Yeah, that guy.
Perhaps the most significant motivation, though, and indicative of the sort of unserious nature of this campaign, is just spite. These people all seem to have deep personal vendettas against Hasan and these other creators that should give one pause when considering the seriousness of the campaign that they're running.
God, he's so cringe. He's like such a cringe loser. I would pay we'd raise $1 million to send this dude to go fight in Yemen, and then all of us would volunteer for the Navy. Holy, he's such a cringe.
Destiny has for almost 5 years just obsessively talked about Hasan on his channel. He's made video after video about him. The frequency of these videos increased after Destiny was banned from Twitch. In the span of time...
Hassan is content, though. Like, you can't... He's just... Every time he opens his mouth and talks sincerely about politics, he's like... He's a content machine. I'm sorry, but not in every lifetime, okay? Not in every timeline of human history are we so blessed by one of the most influential left-wing political voices in the English-speaking world. The second largest political streamer on Twitch, okay? After Asmongold. Peace be upon him. Will come out and compare a Houthi to Anne Frank. That's just really funny, okay? That's just really good content. It's not my fault. Stop being content. Stop saying the maddest every day, and you might stop being content. I can believe I used to listen to you. I'm guessing you mean you can't, Van. Why are you mad? Do you think it's actually appropriate to compare a Houthi to Anne Frank?
Since then, he has uploaded almost 80 videos about Hasan out of a total of like 450 videos. So that's at least 1/5 of his working life spent talking about Hasan. In contrast, in the same span of time, Hasan has uploaded over 1,200 videos, and he's talked about Destiny a total of 5 times. 5. 4 of them have come in the last few months.
That's not fair, because when Hasan used to talk about Destiny, he would say, he wouldn't even say his name. It's only recently he started saying Destiny's name. He would Voldemort reference him, or Divorcelli, or Bonarelli, or oh god, who has the compilation? Hey, that's me. Who has the compilation of Hasan talking about Destiny? 90% of your content is Hasan hate watching. Sad, really. I'm actually hate watching Noah Samsen right now, Van. You lying cunt. Also, when I hate watch, I provide information that you will not get from other streamers. I'm sorry. Like, I know that makes you incredibly angry, but the fact that everyone in here will testify to it, it's like, yeah. Don't know what to tell you. I thought we were also... Noah, at the beginning of this video, said we were going to learn about the ideology that motivates Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, but he never really went into that. He didn't really tell us why Hamas and those guys do what they do to end oppression. Let me give you a couple. If you want to know what the axis of resistance sees Israel as, and this is something they'll reiterate quite a lot, they will constantly do this reference to the cancerous gland or the cancerous entity, because they believe that basically since the end of the 7th century, when Hassan and Hussein were killed brutally, and when Shiites kind of became a distinct minority in the Islamic world, they believe that the Islamic world has strayed from its original intent, which is to unify religion and the state. Because they argue that post Umayyad dynasty, basically what they did was they would take influences from like the Romans and all this shit, and they just thought they saw that as like external influences that were corrupting the Islamic nation. This is all in the Governance of the Jurist by Ayatollah Khomeini from the 80s. And they argue that the Islamic world is basically broken, and it's been broken by centuries of imperialism, of foreign entities, of whether it's Europeans or like even Ottomans or like anything like that. It's always been kind of like fractured and disunified, and most recently by Western powers, mainly America. Or before that, it would have been like the British and the French. But they argue that the Islamic world is fractured, and that Israel is the essence of that fracture, because it is the Jewish state in what would otherwise be a unified Islamic world. So they hate Sykes-Picot and they hate the mandate system and all that, but they also really don't like the conservative Sunni world, because the Sunni world capitulates to a lot of these regimes, right? They're friendly with the United States in large part. Egypt is at peace with Israel. Jordan is at peace with Israel. So that makes them really mad. And this is why Nasrallah will say things like this. He'll say, Israel remains in our minds and plans an illegitimate, illegal, aberrant, and cancerous entity, which we therefore cannot recognize. We will instead work with others to combat normalization with it, because fighting normalization will impede its regional development as a superpower, just as the wars of 73-82, the impact of Lebanese resistance, etc. So, oh yeah, Israel's failure to occupy Lebanon have led to the demise of the military aspect of the Greater Israel Plan. This is why they call themselves the axis of resistance, because although they're trying to destroy a sovereign nation, Israel, stay in your hug box. Van, I debate people like you all the time. You can come in and talk to me if you want. Hug box. Yourself. The reason that they call themselves resistance is not just because they want to resist on behalf of Palestinians in the West Bank or Gaza. It's also because they believe that Israel is predisposed to expand outwards. They think that had it not been for resistance, Israel would be all the way over into Egypt and also conquering up to the Euphrates. That's what they believe. That's why they call themselves the axis of resistance. That's why Hezbollah constantly says, we are here because if we weren't here, Israel would just conquer Lebanon. Same with Assad in Syria. Same with the Houthis, I guess. They probably, I don't know if they think Israel would come that far south, but maybe. So they believe that they're defending the Muslim world from this expansive regime. That's why they don't believe in normalization. They don't dismiss normalization just because Israel exists at all. It's because they think Israel's existence will only ever permeate beyond its own borders. And the other thing that these guys believe that in terms of this solution, okay, is that they're obviously against two states, but they're also against one state for two people, because Nasrallah has said this constantly. They believe that if you fight hard enough and if you terrorize people enough, the Israelis are like any other colonial entity and they will just leave, right? So this is him talking about the Second Intifada. Van, pay attention, because no other idiot that you watch is going to tell you what these guys actually believe. This is Nasrallah just before the Second Intifada outbreak. He says, you don't need tanks, strategic balance, rockets, or cannons to liberate your land. All you need are the martyrs who shook and scared this angry Zionist entity. You can regain your land, you oppressed, helpless, and besieged people of Palestine. You can force the invading Zionists to return from whence they came. Let the Falasha go back to Ethiopia, and let the Russian Jews go back to Russia. The choice is yours, and the example is clear before your eyes. The Israel that owns nuclear weapons has the strongest air force in the region, but is weaker than a spider's web. He also actually says there will be a time when Israelis feel nostalgia for their original homeland. Like they'll want to go back to Poland, or Russia, or Ethiopia, or Iraq, or Yemen. Yeah, this is him calling for the Second Intifada, basically, like urging for it. Yeah, that's what they believe. And they believe that this is the only way that that this is the first step. This is the only way that the Islamic world, the Ummah, can ever return to grace, that it can ever redeem itself, is first of all to lance the cancer, which they say is Israel. So that's why they do what they do. That's what actually makes sense. Like, it's logical. It has an internal logic. It does not have an internal logic to think that Iran just sees Israel's actions and gets really upset because they don't like watching Arabs suffer. Because why would they support Assad, right? These guys have no issue with Arab suffering as long as it supports their cause, right? Like, they don't care about that. But they do care about Israel's presence because they see it as a threat to Islamic redemption. And they'll tell you as much, which is weird that Westerners like to tell you that they think otherwise.
While covering Destiny's role in this smear campaign and the credible allegations of sex crimes against him. So that's less than 1% of his coverage. This isn't an internet beef.
Hey, there's one credible sex crime that Noah agrees with. Nice one. Well done, Noah.
Hasan has a stalker. With Ethan, I feel like I can kind of spot the moment that he started going into this direction, which was the moment that people started calling him racist for saying racist stuff. It was one argument he made where he compared Jewish Voice for Peace anti-Zionist activists to capos.
There was Jewish collaborators with Nazis.
Ethan, don't do that, please. Don't say that.
That's not saying they're the same thing. You know the point of a comparison? The point of a comparison is that they're different. Sorry, the guy who just spent the entire time comparing Israel to Nazi Germany and calling their actions the Holocaust. That's okay, apparently. Where is it's from this debate, isn't it?
You donated to the Palestinian.
Okay, Voice for Peace. Is it capo? How would they spell it differently? Collaborators? Did he say? It is this one, isn't it?
Sure. Activism, Jewish.
Oh, they were talking about people who wanted to destroy Israel.
Voice for Peace, Jews for Economic, and
the existence of Jewish people doesn't. I don't. That point is not very persuasive. I mean, of course there is.
What do you? Of course, it's. I think it's very important
because
if
there's
it was
Israelis that say it.
No,
or a minority or Jewish people shouldn't be offended by it because some people say it. I mean,
no. I think because Jewish people. I'm not going to talk about this as like Jewish people in general. The reason why I brought up Jews for Jewish Voice for Peace and other groups using this as well, like Jews themselves in America using this anti-Zionist slogan, indicates that this slogan isn't one that is about the evisceration of Jews. If that was
this is a bad argument, though. Yeah, Hasan is making the argument that because some Jews say something, therefore that thing cannot be anti-Jewish. Yeah, of course it's okay to bring up capos in that context, because Hasan's argument there was basically that because some tokens exist, right? Regardless of what the argument is, even if you agree with it or not, you can't just say X is not anti-Semitic because some Jews say it. That's retarded. That's so stupid.
Jews for Jewish Voice for Peace and other groups using this as well, like Jews themselves in America using this anti-Zionist slogan, indicates that this slogan isn't one that is
like
about
he's saying some people use this slogan indicates that it doesn't mean this about Jews. What are you talking about?
The evisceration of Jews. If that was the case, then they wouldn't use it.
I'm telling you that the mere existence of Jewish voices it's not a leg to stand on. I don't understand that.
But of course there's going to be failing.
Hasan is literally just trying to say, yes, some Jews agree with me though, even though most of them don't. It's comically stupid. Okay. But apparently that's Ethan saying that Jewish Voice for Peace are the same as capos. Okay.
The Jews' Voice for Peace are akin to capos. Like that's.
I'm telling you that the mere existence of Jewish voices doesn't.
Huh. Oh, that bit's clipped out of Hasan's VOD. Did you see that? That's the same bit they were watching, but that bit's clipped out of Hasan's VOD. Huh.
It's not a leg to stand on. I don't understand that.
The chat started calling
unless Noah cropped it up. Okay.
I'm a Zionist freak because that's a Zionist freak thing to say. And then since then, he's sort of constructed an entire mind prison around the idea that he's not racist, and anyone calling him racist is actually the real racists. And because Hasan's community is politically oriented and is able to spot the racist rhetoric in question, that means they're all extremists and Hasan is leading them, so he's
Who's he being racist against there? Jews? Is he being racist against Jews there by saying that? Okay.
Extremist, and that Hasan and them are all the problem, and that he's a perfect angel, which is the direction he's taken, it seems like.
My only crime is wanting a two-state solution instead of one, and thinking it's...
Your crime is not supporting the resistance, buddy. These guys will not let you they will not let you stop short of supporting the resistance. I'm sorry. That's how it goes.
Not okay to kill Israeli civilians. That's it. That's why they're calling me a Nazi Zionist.
And now he's just totally gone off the rails. He spends most of his time cowering in fear behind Instagram stories that people can't respond to. Every single one of the uploads on his personal YouTube channel in the last number of months have been targeted towards Hasan. He spent most of his live podcast talking about Hasan and calling him a terrorist and whatnot.
What is this? Bro, I have not seen a single one of his Instagram stories. I didn't know he was posting about me this much. Oh my God, every day? Every single day? No.
There was that one Instagram story where Ethan Klein was having to evacuate due to the wildfires or something, and he managed to make the post about Hasan and about how Hasan probably thinks it's awesome that his house might burn down while his family is in the background trying to evacuate the wildfires. Just wild.
Is that what they think was happening? They think that the fire is just licking at the door, and they're like, Ethan, we gotta get out of here, and he's like, no, I need to tweet about Hasan. Oh God, what a snooze fest. Van, you could be anywhere in the world right now and you're here. What does that say about you? Stop complaining, okay? What's wrong with you? If you want to talk, you can talk. I'm always up for conversations, okay? If you want to come out of your hug box.
Klein has repeatedly denied any association with this campaign and Destiny.
You're literally watching a gaming stream right now. I don't know why you would come here expecting to have your mind blown. Like,
community. That may have something to do with the recent credible allegations that Destiny is a sex criminal, but this is false. Ethan has been caught on his live podcast browsing the Destiny subreddit for arguments to use to attack Hasan. Leaks Discord logs show Dan Saltman admitting to exchanging emails with Ethan and the H3 team personally during the campaign. And even if there wasn't evidence of direct communication, the far more important connection is that Ethan is saying the exact same things, using the same out of context clips that everyone else used to call Hasan a terrorist or whatever. It's been a group effort. That's just what it is. So just a few final thoughts here. Zionism is Nazism. It's an ethnic supremacist, expansionist, colonial ideology.
Just so you guys know, Zionism, if you want to know the origins of Zionism and what it means, first of all, I'll tell you what it means and I'll tell you where it came from. It means a Jewish state, like a state somewhere. It doesn't have to be Israel. They chose Israel. It doesn't have to be that area, but it is now. And it means there should be a Jewish state with a Jewish majority people, because that's the way that Jews can avoid persecution. That's the idea. Where it came from. Once upon a time, okay, in Europe, there were European Jews, and they were kind of in a pretty bad time, okay? There were pogroms. They had a very difficult time becoming seen as equal citizens anywhere, basically. They were purged from the UK like 3 times. They were purged by Edward I in when he was fighting the Scots, kicked out of the country en masse and not allowed back until 500 years later. Yeah, Jews had a rough time. Towards the 20th century, 19th, 20th century, Jews started believing that if they assimilated into European kind of Christian culture, they would be okay. If they dropped a lot of the things that made them distinct, they would be safe. They could become integrated as citizens. And then in 1881, I believe it was, Alexander II, I'm so bad with these dates, was killed. And then there was a wave of anti-Jewish riots all across the Russian Empire. I think about 13 or 1400 pogroms in the space of 30 or 40 years. and Jews started running. Most of them went west towards Europe. Some of them went to Palestine, a very small group of them who had spent generations talking about next year in Jerusalem and all this kind of shit. They went to Israel and started buying up land to set up little communities. Very independently, very separately. The ones who were in Europe mostly were assimilationists. They believed that if they just became more like everyone else, they would get guaranteed citizenship. They had like emancipation movements at the time. Jews were starting to get citizenship in Germany and France in the late 1800s. But there were some people who were not so sure. One of them was Herzl. Okay, Herzl claimed that he was influenced by the Dreyfus affair. He actually wasn't. He made his decision to go the Zionist way for other reasons. He argued that Jews were never going to be accepted in Europe. No matter how much they assimilated, if they did everything right, they would still get treated like outsiders. He would cite the Dreyfus affair as as proof of that, because Dreyfus was a decorated military dude who was very, very assimilated, about as assimilated as you could possibly get, and was defamed completely. He had fabricated evidence against him. It was very clear that the evidence was fabricated, and he was still punished nonetheless. That was his evidence. Most Jews didn't agree. Most Jews thought, no, assimilation is going to work. And Herzl was condemned to lead a fairly small movement to try and go to establish a Jewish state somewhere else in the world, or a Jewish homeland, they called it. Turned out Herzl was right, because the European Jews who were killed in the Holocaust and had all their property taken from them in Germany or in Poland or in Czechoslovakia or anywhere else, they were the most assimilated Jews you could possibly find. They had worked so hard to assimilate compared to the Jews of 100 years prior and way before that. They were about as integrated as they'd ever been, and then the Holocaust happened. So that's all happening, and throughout the 20th century, the warning signs of the rise of fascism are everywhere, okay, especially after World War I. Lots of Jews run over to America because America seems to be the one country on earth where you can go there and just become an American, right? You wouldn't get treated as much of an outsider as you were in places like Europe. Others went to Palestine. Not to make money, not to do imperialism, not to do standard like French-Algerian settler colonialism or whatever. They actually mostly lost money by going there because there's a whole saying that was, if you want to make a small fortune in Israel, Palestine, then just arrive with a big one. They went there because they believed that finding a homeland where they could be the majority was the only way to guarantee their safety. They purchased land. Most of the early settlers who moved there purchased land along the coast that was not lived in, or they purchased swampland and drained the swamps and set up like civilian life there. Others, later on into the 20s, 30s, 40s, started buying land and evicting families, tenant farmers. Bit more controversial, but that's the origins of Zionism. Like, just so you know, we can go into further where a lot of those Zionists who arrived in Palestine, and especially the concept of a Jewish homeland, was massively rejected by the locals. Some rejected it non-violently, others, like Al-Husseini, rejected it very violently, and lots of people were attacked. The Jews, in their way of defending their attempt to take land that wasn't really, they hadn't been holding on to for quite a while, was to disproportionately respond. So that's where you have the birth of the Haganah, etc. But the origin of Zionism is still that idea that they wanted to go to that part of the world because they thought that a majority was the only way they could survive. So you can criticize the Zionist movement, you can criticize Ben-Gurion for all the horrible shit that he did, and the Zionist movement and the Irgun and all the right-wing parties and the revisionists. They all did horrible shit. Nasty things. The reason that Jews made the decision to move to Israel, for the most part, was because they didn't have anywhere else to go, because they felt like that was the one place they could be safe. Both things are true at the same time. And even after World War II ended, after the Holocaust ended, every other country saw that and still said, we don't really want Jews coming over here. America made an exception for a couple of 100,000 DPs who were left after the Holocaust. They still kept up the Johnson-Reed Act for the most part. They still kept their quotas. They still made sure that Most people wouldn't be able to go there. Most other European countries did the same. Those DP camps were actually kept open for years. After 1945, a lot of those old German concentration camps, including Bergen-Belsen, where Anne Frank died, they were kept open for Jews because they didn't have anywhere to put them. There's a whole meme in Schindler's List at the end of the film, you know, when the Jews escape the camp, the camp's liberated by the Soviet guy, and he says, don't go that way because they'll hate you over there. He also says, don't go that way, the other way, because they hate you there as well. Yeah, they didn't have anywhere else to go. And then most of them, or quite a lot of them, felt like Palestine was the only other option. So a quarter of those displaced persons, it was either a fifth or a quarter, of those Holocaust survivors who came out of those displaced persons camps ended up in the Haganah. A quarter of the Haganah at the beginning of the 48 war were people who had come out of camps. Like, Zionism is not about conquering a land because we're the superior people and we deserve it and we should kill and plunder the people who live there. That's not what it was about. Zionism was about survival. It was about Jewish survival. Doesn't exempt them from all the unethical acts. Doesn't mean everything they did was justified. It doesn't make the 48 war justified, least of all, the Nakba. But it is not Nazism, you charlatan cunt. Go back to shitting on Fresh and Fit. Like, it is so different from Nazism. Oh my God. Anyway, it is so different from Nazism. Nazism is conquering, it's what he says, is conquering land that you don't need because you think you're the masters of the universe. Like, that's not, like, it shows. Look at how much land, like, when people look at these maps, right? Even if you go with this map, which has problems, even if you go with this map, okay? This is a very small region. And this is what they do in the space of, I don't know why they're saying 46. This was like, okay. God, this map is so dumb. All right. This is what Israel's done in 75 years. And Zionism technically started in like the 1880s, or even a little bit before that. What did the Nazis do? Like, look at the gray.
Yo, Lonerbox.
Hey.
I got a question. Do you think it was good for Israel to like annex territory during the 6 Day War?
What, the Golan?
Yeah.
Nope.
Interesting.